Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Nikita Lambert, and I have a special guest with me today. Her name is Asha. She's actually one of my very best friends. And for anyone who knows me, you know that my whole platform is based around me being a validation coach. I provide validation and education for people who grew up with narcissistic and otherwise emotionally abusive my community, partly because I've and then partly because I hadn't really reconciled like how to combine the space that I'm in with the topic that we're going to talk about today. So buckle up for anybody who's been along the ride with me for the last year or two. You're going to see a whole new side of me. And that side is the side that was a member of the International Churches of Christ, specifically the Hampton Roads Church in Southeastern Virginia. And if you do any amount of Google or YouTube searching, this is so embarrassing to say already, you will see the word cult all over the place. And during 2020, the pandemic, I was able to sit back and realize and reflect on a lot because I wasn't so busy going to different meetings and services and things like that. And then at the beginning of 2021, I decided to leave the church and no longer be a do I want to share? And I wasn't sure, very nervous. Now is a good time for a number of reasons. And one of the reasons being that when I left, I had this small, intimate community of which Asha was a part. And we were all kind of reflecting and leaving together and trying to feel out what we had been experiencing. And we were able to validate each other's experiences. But for a lot of people who have left, they didn't have that community. And as we reconnect with those people who left some years ago, they just talk about how validating and good it feels to talk to somebody else about their experience who gets it. Because if you're not part of the ICOC, if you didn't experience it and then step back, you really don't get it. So since I am a validation coach, I decided to make this series. It's going to be a series, just so people feel like they have a safe space and hopefully they can see their self in us. So that is what this is. This is the first of, I'm thinking 5 or 6 videos. And yeah, so welcome to the ride. Today we're going to be talking about the ICOC leadership structure. It's a hierarchy, even though they will say that it's not. And there really is a culture of leader worship and leader idolatry. And that system of leadership is quite narcissistic. So there's layers to this, and we're going to dive into all of it. This is going to be kind of a long conversation today. So go ahead and do whatever you need to do around the house, paint your nails, start folding laundry, do the dishes, maybe put it on for a commute. But settle in because we've minced our words for a long time and share in a space that we've curated. So before we dive in, I had some disclaimers that I wanted to present. So I'm going to read this. If this seems a little robotic, I just wanted to make sure I felt good about the word choice and that I don't miss anything. So, number 1, these are personal experiences that we are sharing. So please do not try to tell us that we don't know what we're talking about. We know what we lived through. And if you think that this happens in isolation, do a YouTube search for ICOC and you will see an abundance of people who are telling similar stories. Not to mention that we have many friends and associates who share similar and same experiences, not just from the Hampton Roads Church, but all over the country. Next, what we're discussing is trauma and abuse, psychological. So for any current member to leadership, we are not interested in talking offline to try to see things from another perspective. And this is not because we're not reasonable. This is because for years, for me, over 10 years, and I think for Asha, was it over 20 years?
Yeah. 20
Yeah,
years.
over 20 years that we have tried to have conversation with leadership, with elders, with evangelists, with women's ministry leaders, with Bible talk leaders, so many different people, just to be gaslit, to be shamed, to be lied to, quite honestly, over and over and over again. And we're done with that. It took us a long time to get out of the system. And now that we're out, we're just not trying to hear it anymore. So yeah, we're not. Don't ask us to talk. No qualifiers. We don't want to hear from you. If you want to apologize, we're all for it, but that's it. If you text, email, or message us on a social media platform about this, in a way that's trying to persuade us, convince us, question, whatever, or advise us, if you will, there is a good chance that we will take that message, screenshot it, and make a video about it. So do with that information what you will. If you comment on this video defending in any way the abusive behavior we're discussing, one of two things will happen. We will delete it and block you to prevent other people from having to be exposed to that toxic rhetoric, because even your presence in comments can be quite intimidating and harmful. Or we'll leave it up as an example for the world to see how what we're saying is true by letting you prove our point. So, next, while we're sharing about a very harmful and toxic system, please know that we are not completely discounting any genuine kindness and help that was extended to us during our time in this organization. There were many acts of service and ways that we've been supported and helped and things like that, and we're not discounting that. Caveat: we are aware, just because we were in it and have done these things, that a lot of the kindness can be attributed to love bombing, breadcrumbing, and people feeling guilty and like they had to serve us as part of their duty to a God that denies people a right to healthy boundaries and rest. With that being said, we do know and acknowledge that there were some genuine connections made and some acts of kindness performed that we are truly grateful for. So if you've had those interactions and those connections with us, and you know that you've served us out of the kindness of your heart, we know who you are, you know who you are. And the things that we're saying does not discount those interactions. Because we're really going to get into it today. And so without that disclaimer, you might think that we hate you. But if you know who you are and the shoe fits, okay, don't take it personal. And lastly, there may be some profanity in this video at some point. I'm not promising it. I'm not guaranteeing it. But depending on how this conversation rolls, and if me and Asha are just getting riled up, because some of this stuff is crazy, y'all. It's really crazy. It could happen. It could slip out. And so, you might want to put your earbuds in if you have small children or, people around you with particularly sensitive souls. So just don't say we didn't warn you. So anyway, that is the whole setup. I want to hand it over to Asha so she can introduce herself. Like I said, this is one of my very best friends. It was her birthday earlier this week, and I told her she is just one of the most special gifts for me to come into my life since the pandemic. I trust her. I adore her. I appreciate her. And her mom is also a narcissist. So she gets me, I get her. And yes, I'm going to hand it over. Asha, tell the people who you are.
Hello, everybody. I am Asha. Like Nikita, I was a member of the International Church of Christ, ICOC. So I became a member. I am now 42. I just turned 42. I became a member at the age of 18. So that makes it was 21 years. So just like Nikita, the time of the pandemic 2020 was a huge time of reflection and slowing down and being quiet and starting to just listen to my brain, my own brain, listen to my body and pick up on my own thoughts and what was happening and how I was feeling. So it was 2020, the end of 2020, when I actually decided take me off the roll. So it's probably around the beginning of 2021, actually. While I was a part of ICOC, I became a member while being in the campus ministry. And then from campus ministry, I moved to working as a teen ministry leader. And I stayed within that role in the church for about 10 years or more. It's cloudy now. A lot of it is cloudy now, about 10 years. And then after getting out of that ministry, we were in within being in the teen ministry, I got married. So me and my husband, after leaving the teen ministry, just became a part of the married's ministry. So we were just a couple in married's Bible talks. And then at a certain point, we became Bible talk leaders, and that lasted for quite a few years. And that was a big eye opener as well, as I started to meet, get to know, and help, convert. That word is very loaded to me right now, convert other married people into the church. So yeah, a big part of what had happened with me finally deciding to leave this church. As I mentioned before, we had the pandemic. And so I have respiratory issues. I have severe anxiety that definitely got heightened being a part of what we'll talk about, this high pressure, high productivity system, but also respiratory issues. So of course, we have this novel virus that is attacking people. And causing them to, die due to pneumonia. So I was very afraid of that because a normal cold would cause me to have pneumonia, right? And it was not pleasant. The thought of suffocating to death was something that I could picture because there were a couple times that I was almost there. And so just like many churches or different places, we stopped meeting together in person, and so things went on Zoom. But this wasn't just any normal church where you just meet on Sundays and have your close relationships. The idea of church with ICOC is that it is your life. It is what dictates your schedule. It is how you make decisions. It is where you live. It's how you spend your money. It's everything. So with everything shutting down, it was the first time I got a chance in a long time just to sit still and just be, just exist. And it was strange. It was very weird. And the one thing, of course, on the forefront of my mind was keeping me and my family safe. So by this point in 2020, I'm married, of course, and I have 2 children. At that time, oh my gosh, they were age 3 and 6. So yeah, that's 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm trying to keep everybody safe, trying to figure out how we're going to live now. Like, what does life look like? And in my fear of dying from this new virus, I had a lot of thinking going on, a lot of self-reflection. And the one thing I thought to myself was, I hope I go to heaven, right? I hope that I've done enough, that I have performed enough. Did I study the Bible with enough people? how am I doing? How am I doing? Am I doing good spiritually? I don't know. And the one thing I wanted to do was reach out to people to see, what did they think? Am I okay? And I was like, well, I should know if I'm okay. I've been a part of this church for a long time. I haven't been a part of this church. I've been a part of the kingdom of God. And why are you so anxious anyway? Shouldn't you be calm? You're the one out here doing it right. You're the one out here following the Bible when nobody else is. People will not admit it, but that is a big part of being a part of ICOC, is believing that you are the one true church. I'm just going to say it. People say, we don't think that, but we do. I did. You'll hear me use the word we, even though I'm no longer a part of this church, because that's how much it was in my DNA. And sometimes it's hard for me to stop saying that. And what I realized in that moment was a big part of my idea of whether or not I was right with God had to do with how pleased my behavior, my activities, my performance would have been to ICOC. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I knew in that moment that it shouldn't be that way. And I just thought about Jesus, and in the Gospels, there are people coming to him and saying, Jesus, we ate with you and you taught in our streets. And, and he tells them, I never knew you. And in that moment, that scripture made sense to me. Oh, this is how he never knew them, because they were going, doing so much. But the connection probably wasn't to Jesus. It was to their performance, to maybe the Pharisees, to whoever they felt was holding them accountable. That's how I felt anyway. I thought, I'm those people. And so I was like, I need to make some changes. So that was the beginning of my awakening. So I don't know, you want me to keep going talking about how I officially got out, Nikita? Okay.
I was muted. Yeah, like how did you, when was it like, I'm done?
Right. So during this time, a lot was going on. There was a lot of tension racially in the world, and people are starting to get tired of that, picking up on systemic racism. And one of our evangelists actually decided to do a lesson about this and come clean that there are ideals that they even hold on to that we need to address in this fellowship. Now, in this type of fellowship, you think what the group wants you to think, right? We do everything together. We read the same books. We always have campaigns. We're doing the Bible in a year. There is always a focus in this group. They tell us what we're focusing on this year, what we're focusing on this quarter. Here is your sheet. Here are the things
literally.
I am not. I wish I had some of them. Like I would have a stack this big. And so with this person opening up this discussion, all this stuff just flooded my head, because it was almost like I wasn't allowed to think about it. It just was no room for it, because I had all these other assignments, right? And so I don't think this person expected, though, for people to be like, well, let's talk about it, because we got some stuff to say. We actually have a lot to say. Thank you so much for opening up the floor. We're ready. And then all of a sudden, you see the leadership starting to be like, whoa. We didn't think it was all of this. And then this apparent openness and willingness to talk about this stuff quickly became back off. Bring it down here. Y'all are getting a little too crazy. And we're like, wait, we thought you wanted to know these things. And it was like, well, we're starting to feel a little offended or attacked. And it's like, but it's not an attack. We want to discuss this stuff so that we can bring about unity, and we can stop suppressing this pain that we feel, even in this fellowship. And so it was like, okay. So they decided to start having these meetings, like some type of coalition, or I forgot what it was called.
Was it the Unity Task Force?
The Unity Task Force.
Oh, I was in it, and it was a mess. It was a mess.
And I went to one meeting. My heart is beating just thinking about it. And I remember the leader come into the meeting, and you have all of these people, a lot of people who are minorities, because we thought this is the time where they want to hear us. And all of us had great intentions on, like, we just want to talk about this stuff because it is painful, but we're all devoted to this fellowship. We want to be here. But anyway, this leader showed up and was like, all right, so what are we going to do? How about we start, maybe we'll sing more, historically Black songs on Sunday. Okay, so go, what songs? And all of us were in the meeting like, what? And so one person was brave enough to speak up and said, no, we want to talk about issues. we want to talk about how we feel, how there is, an environment that comes across as hostile to anything that is different. And how Black people specifically have felt that there are different standards for us, and that we aren't welcome to express our unique challenges here, and how it gets minimized and we get gaslit. He didn't use all these words, but it was the way that this person was sharing. And so then the leaders of this Unity Task Force were like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that. Well, let's talk about it. And I think in that moment I froze, because, and there's probably a name for this, right? But it's gotta be a name for this phenomenon. It was a weird phenomenon to gaslight yourself, have all this cognitive dissonance that you're constantly pushing way down and saying, I'm happy. And then someone who has the power to help you with that finally saying, I'm here to listen. And you're like, oh my God, and all this stuff comes up. And then the person turns around and says, no, not like that. That's like, emotionally, you just went through a roller coaster. And in that moment, I just knew I don't feel safe, really. I don't feel like this meeting is what they said it was or what I thought it was. Actually, I just want to go back to stuffing everything because I feel like I'm losing my mind. And so I just sat there. And I had all the stuff I wanted to say, but when this person came in and started talking about songs, I was like, I'm not safe. And so I received a text message from the person speaking up saying, didn't you have stuff to say? Go ahead and say it. And I was like, okay. So I finally spoke up and said, hey, I think what I've experienced is this environment where there's almost this policing of emotions. You're not allowed to feel that. People even discipling you, which is correcting you out of a way of thinking that they're not comfortable with. And immediately I was kind of cut off, and the leader said, oh, well, you should talk to that person. And I was like, no, it's not a person. It's the whole environment. It's the leaders. It's a group. It's spoken from the pulpit. And they were like, well, we don't know that. Give us an example. And I gave them an example. I remember, the Walking Dead series, person at the church wore a t-shirt that says, if Daryl dies, we riot. And it was about Daryl from The Walking Dead, a comic book. But because it says, if Daryl dies, we riot, this leader pulled me aside and was like, what does that shirt mean?
Wait, you had the shirt on?
No, someone else did, but they pulled me in.
Oh, okay.
So this is probably something I forgot. For me being at 20 years at that point, probably at that point I was in for 17 years. and being a leader, I was definitely a trusted person. So you have these trusted people throughout the fellowship who, you can delegate to go handle certain things. And I guess this person felt comfortable telling me to go talk to that other person about their shirt because I'm Black. Like, and
the person wearing the shirt was Black?
Yes. And the person wearing the shirt was Black. Yes, details. And so they pulled me aside to say, what does that shirt mean? What is that? And I was like, oh, that's, from a comic book. Daryl is people's favorite character. And this person was like, oh, whew, because I thought it had something to do with this racial stuff. And we do not deal in civilian affairs here. And I was like, got it. I understand. I get it. And I just remember walking away from that conversation and thinking, if it was about someone who was being brutally beaten by police or something unjust, wouldn't you want to even be more concerned about how that person felt wearing a t-shirt? You just want to immediately shut it down. So that's the example I shared. And then they were like, oh, we probably know who that was. And, they probably would totally handle that different now. So moving on, it was just, let's excuse away what you're sharing. Let's not hear the main point of what you're sharing. We are going to say, we didn't know, you should have told us. And now that you're telling us, it's really not a problem. All right. And so other people chimed in and tried to bring about the clarity of what I and others were saying. Long story short, by the end of it, I was just trembling because I think in that moment I realized I get it. It's not really about people. It's not really about how we feel. It's not really about loving others. Is this stuff a threat to us? And if it is, we will shut it down, or it's our job to smooth it over. And after that meeting, I just felt sick. I was like, why do I feel sick? And I went to my room, and next thing you know, I had a panic attack, my first ever panic attack. Now, I've been very anxious for years, but I had never had a panic attack. Full blown, I can't breathe. I think I'm about to die. It felt like my airway was completely closed tight. I was like telling my husband, like, help, like, you have to drive me to the hospital. He was like, what? And I just was like, I don't know. I started drinking water, just doing stuff. And I was like on my knees having a panic attack. And finally, I realized, because I'm in the medical field, I was like, oh, I know what this is. People have described this to me before. This is a panic attack. And I just was like, breathe. Just try to take some deep breaths, try to relax. And I finally, it took a while, pulled myself out of that. And I was like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? And what came up next was there's this thing called a global leadership conference. And it's something that is put on by a whole other church. And it's not necessarily a spiritual event. They mix spirituality with professional development. And it's something that me and my coworkers go to every year. It's been about 3 or 4 years that we all go to. And that was coming up for the week. And so I went to that, and this time it was virtual, right? Because of the pandemic. And they had Henry Cloud there at this conference. And for his lesson, he did mix it with psychology and also with spirituality. And he was talking about churches that heal and how he is starting this program because he's realizing that it's people at churches who are suffering the most with psychological issues. And he was saying how in a lot of churches, people are put on pedestals that they shouldn't be. And a lot of church leaders are happy to take away your autonomy, take away your decision-making, and how this leads to anxiety and panic. The number one cause of panic is feeling like you are not at the wheel of your own life. and how damaging this is. And I finally put those two together and I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not at the wheel of my life. What does that even look like? What does that even
Right.
look like? Now, simultaneously at this time, one of my best friends for the longest time in this same church was feeling a lot of the same things. And, you know, it's so blurry. I can't remember how we started talking about this book or who brought it up. But we started reading a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, because it's this whole thing about there's a healthy way to go about spirituality that I'm learning from Henry Cloud that I don't have. And then we came across this book. And then it became a book club for other people who were struggling. Mm-hmm. And Nikita, I believe that's where we started to get close, because we were a part of this book club, and we're reading this book about what makes something healthy spirituality and what makes something unhealthy. And I'm sure you can attest to this, Nikita. We were learning that the things that we thought were healthy, the things that we were taught were how you were the true test of you being a true follower of Jesus, were actually things that were extremely damaging, had nothing to do with what God actually wanted for you, and actually wasn't helpful whatsoever. And
can I say something?
Yeah, go for it.
And so just to put in a little aside, you know, today's topic is, you know, the hierarchy and listening to the leaders and taking away autonomy. So while I'm in this group, and it's intimate, it's like maybe 5 of us and then a couple of our spouses. And I guess word is traveling that there are people who are starting to be free thinking, and there were some of us who hadn't left yet. Like I hadn't officially left yet, Asha hadn't officially left yet, and then 1 or 2 of us who like had left or just dipped out or something like that. And so I was sharing with someone who was like a mentor figure. They're like, oh, I'm reading this book, I'm in a group, it's going really great, da da da. And she says, oh, well, is it the group that so-and-so is in? Because I would just be really careful with that book. I would just, you know, like, I don't remember what she said exactly, but like mentioned the person who was in fact in the group, but I never confirmed nor denied. I just was kind of listening like, you learn to get good at that when you have a narcissistic mom. You just kind of like let them talk and ride the wave. And she's like, oh, you just want to be careful. There, I hear that there are people, there is a book club that's doing like, I don't know, like what the slaves are learning to read. Like what? It's just so, you're reading a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. And then when you share with someone that they're warning you that like to be careful because there are these thoughts and ideas going around. So that was just a side note that, you know, we weren't necessarily broadcasting. I don't even know how word got out. Like I have no idea, but just how these things are like squashed. Like don't even think about starting your own campaign with your own group, reading your own book. Whoa, bring it back. We need to talk about is hospitality. Have more people in your house, cook more food, clean more dishes, wash other people's dishes. And I'm not lying.
No,
so
a bit more.
Okay, I just had to add that note because I was like, no, people need to know that this was not just a quiet little book club. Well, we were a quiet little book club, but it was making waves.
It was making waves. We weren't even trying. I'm just trying not to have panic attacks anymore, not to be depressed, to actually have authenticity in my relationship with Jesus so that he won't say, I don't know you. And these are the things that this fellowship considers threatening. This is what's considered threatening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just had to pause there. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I started to say, you know, I'm going to take some of this autonomy back. I'm going to figure out who I really am, you know, in Christ. I have some thinking to do. I have some healing to do. Those panic attacks started to be very frequent during that time. It was affecting my career. I am a professor at a college. I have to get up and go and stand in front of students, you know. I just wanted to get better. I just wanted to heal. None of this initially started out as, I want to take down this church. I want to rebel against all of you. I thought at this point that these people still sincerely cared about me and wanted me to get better. I just was doing what I needed to do. Because you still at this time, even though you see these issues, you still are kind of telling yourself, well, every church has issues. And some of this is probably my fault, right? Because I should have looked into this. I should have thought about this stuff. I'm just trying to get healthy. And that's where, like, in you are bringing into a segue of the next wave of this transition out of this church. It was like, okay, good. We want you to be healthy. But then I guess I wasn't healing in the way people expected. They felt this healing was supposed to be like me getting myself together and just coming back to.
Oh, wait.
Mm-hmm.
So let's skip to the end where you actually like leave, because I feel like the segue story, you'll probably be able to like weave into the different topics.
Gotcha.
And I'm so like, every time you bring something up, I'm like, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it.
Yes. So that stuff started, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but that stuff started to happen, which really hurt. People started questioning me. I had already heard from my sisters who were also a part of this church, that people were saying, we heard your sister's falling away. And falling away,
falling away.
We'll talk about that, which is like, what? That's the worst.
The worst.
Somebody. The worst thing you can say in the church is someone's falling away.
Either they're falling away or they're not doing well spiritually, which you alluded to earlier. Nobody wants to be said that, like, when the leaders talk about you at the staff meeting, you never want them to say you're not doing well. The prayer list, the struggling list. No, literally, guys, this list exists. There's a whole portion of the staff meeting that's like, okay, what is it? The weak list or what is it? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The people on the list are not doing well, and you're supposed to pray with them and text them and get lunch with them to encourage them and police them.
Yes. Policing. I was a part of that. Okay. I was a part of the policing.
Oh, me too. I'll get to that when I share my story. But we were definitely in it.
As hard as I had worked not to get on that list, I'm on the list and people are talking about me. And all I want to do is get better. But nobody cares that I'm not getting better. They care that I'm not showing up to these meetings. I'm not here when they say it. I'm not engaging the way they want me to engage. And so this is how I finally made the decision. And I can't help but to feel like this was some type of divine intervention. It was toward the end of 2020, like I said, it's October 26th, which is my spiritual birthday. So I am up online because I'm anxious. I'm on the struggling list. People have said I'm falling away. I'm trying to get healthy. I'm reading this book. I want to do these things, but when you're in a cult, your brain is split into a million different pieces. And so I was up late. Insomnia has become a huge part of my life. And I was on YouTube, and it's a YouTube channel called Not the Good Girl. And it is a channel it has turned into a channel about cults and coercive, controlling environments. But it started out as this person sharing her journey toward leaving an MLM, multi-level marketing. I'm a big anti-MLMer. I hate it. Do not send me any emails. Do not send me a hey girl email. They are pyramids.
Hey hun.
I do not care. So I am a big anti-MLM consumer, which is crazy because the anti-MLM community, are the people who really helped me to see what was happening in the church. That's a whole nother conversation. That could be a different podcast, but I would love Not the Good Girl. So I'm looking at her video, and she, this night on my spiritual birthday, decided to have a guest on who was discussing the similarities between MLMs and controlling churches.
Wow.
He was an expert in controlling churches, and they were talking about the similarities and the tactics, the mental gymnastics, the manipulation, the emotional control. And there were so many similarities. And that moment, I realized why I liked anti-MLM content so much, is because I related to it. It was funny. But this person was talking about how, because one thing you feel a lot when you start to realize what you've been a part of is a lot of shame. And so that was one of the big feelings that I was feeling. Shame, embarrassment, lots of hurt. And he was like, you got to understand, when you're in an environment like this, you're both captive and captor. It's a very complex situation, especially if you were brought into something like this, which we'll talk about in college. Churches who invest a lot in their campus ministries are people who you probably have to look out for, because they understand the mindset of college students. They're very idealistic, they're very open-minded. And if you can get somebody at that point, you have them like forever. He said, for me, I was with a church like this. They were very good with being charismatic. They were really good with how they handled the Bible. I loved it until the cognitive dissonance started coming up. He said, I was in for 21 years before I got out. And it was that day that I had just turned 21 as a member of this church.
Wow.
And his experience was identical to mine, and everything this person explained, and I just dropped my phone, like, what in the world? Like, it's clear. So that's when I officially, had the courage to say, take me off the roll,
Okay.
So yeah.
Nice. Cool. And I don't know if you guys caught, Asha alluded to it a little bit earlier, but she's in the medical field. Yeah. She is a professor. She speaks at events, like her peers and supervisors and things are constantly tapping her on the shoulder to give presentations. She's a part of a board that creates and critiques standardized tests for higher education. So this woman is brilliant. Okay. She's brilliant. Maybe she'll talk more about like the life that she came from, but like she came from some places. And so I say that to say that you might think that someone who falls susceptible to this type of like brainwashing and system might not be very bright, but that is not the case. And we'll get into it. The different strategies that are used in people who are more susceptible, but yeah. Myself, I was about to move on, and I guess I do have to give the story because I never talk about this part of myself on my platform. So similar to Asha, or the same as Asha, I joined the church when I was 18. That was back in 2007. And I officially left, I think in like February or March of 2021. So that's like 13, 14 years. And let's see. They got me when I was in college. You guys know, mom, narcissistic. I was 7 hours away from home. And I was looking for purpose. I had always been very ambitious. Student body president, class president, honors this, AP that, like all the things, and want to change the world. And then these people swoop me up and teach me like, hey, the most important way that you can change the world and impact people is through saving their souls. Like, and then of course there's the scripture, what benefit is it to gain the whole world and lose your very self? And I'm like, that's right. What does all the money matter? What does a job matter if you're going to go to hell or, whatever. And they sell you this whole thing. And I'm not saying, who doesn't want peace and eternal rest and happiness or whatever. But they just really sell it in such a way that it gets you to discard any other priority that you have besides their mission for you. And that is, it's so juicy and it's so meaty. That's why this is a series that deserves its own episode, which you will get. But anyway, that's how I was brought in, because they sold me the dream. Yeah. So I joined when I'm 18. Since then, so I was in the campus ministry. Even after I graduated college, I still volunteered for a year, serving in the campus ministry, leading. That's actually how I fell in love with my husband. And after that, we transitioned into the teen ministry. So that was like the youth and family kind of, and we worked with teenagers. And I'm like, Asha, we might need to do a an episode on the teen ministry, actually. Asha spent a lot of time in the teens. So then from there, transitioned into the marrieds ministry. And that's where I spent the rest of my days. And just like Asha, I had grown to be a trusted person, actually very quickly. I think I was just 8 or 9 months old spiritually before they made me a Bible talk leader. And that's just what they call their small groups. I think small group is a more universal term that we call them Bible talks. So Bible talk leader, I was going to leadership retreats and things like that, very much groomed. And it's because I think I present very well. They're looking for sharp people. They're looking for leaders. I was actually told at one point that I need to bring more leaders to church and stop bringing people with different illnesses or insecurities or who needed a job or whatever, because they don't contribute as much to the church. And they're not as stable, and they can be users. So literally, no lie, I told these things. Not like Jesus came to heal the sick or anything. We don't want that. We want people who can tithe, and we want people who can lead and make us look good. They didn't say that specifically, but that was definitely all the in between the lines. Oh, yeah. And when you're hearing that, again, you've been baited in. So you're like, yeah, we do want people who can build the kingdom. Yeah, we do want people who can be all things to all men. Yeah, the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. We need people who can lead. And once we get more leaders, then we can invite more of those people in, because we'll have someone to take care of them. You hear how warped this is, right? But hey, this is my story. So I went off on a tangent. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, I was one of the trusted people. So I fit the bill. I speak well. I think I've been doing like oratory and speech contests since I was in middle school. So I could learn to preach and talk and communicate hard things. And so they would pull me in to talk about hard things with other Black members, just like they did with Asha. And so, yeah, looking back, I totally feel tokenized. But so that was my story. How I had left, it was similar to Asha, whereas when 2020 hit and now we're not having as many meetings, we're not going as many places, I am able to sit back. I am able to relax. And there's a lot to be said for time when you get to reflect. Yeah. And you get to think. And it started to become clear, like, oh my gosh, I haven't been able to really think for myself because I've just been going. I've been going from meeting to meeting to meeting. Like, I haven't had time to reflect on this wheel that I'm on. Yeah. And so even though there had been some cognitive dissonant moments over the years, you quickly dismiss it as, well, I just don't understand. I'm not as wise as the leaders. I don't understand the vision. And things like that. Oh, don't be critical. Trust the leaders. And then you're busy. So it's like, oh, got to get back to this, got to go to this meeting. And so you don't have time to really develop a well thought out, critical thought about what you're a part of. But pandemic. Now there's nowhere to go. And so you add on top of that the civil rights movement of summer of 2020. And don't let this light skin, conventional American speaking voice fool you, okay? Growing up, my mom, I have no idea why. I think I was talking to Asha yesterday. I think it's because she was lighter skinned and had some complexes growing up in the 60s and 70s. But one thing she made sure that I knew, especially being a little Black girl, light skinned girl in South Carolina in honors classes, surrounded by white people. I was always one of like 3 or 4 Black kids in the class. She would always tell me, this is hilarious, you ain't white. If I try to do my hair in 2 ponytails, but I didn't braid them, you ain't white. Your hair gonna frizz up. Try to walk outside in flip-flops in the rain. You ain't white. Like just whatever happened, like try to listen to Cascada. I don't remember them. They were big in the early 2000s. Can we listen to some Black people music? Like, so I might not know exactly what I am, but I know what I am not. So, and I went to Hampton University and HBCU. Like, I love all people. I really do. I really do. But I ride for my people. Okay. Like, I'm very culturally, like, I just love it. I love it. And so injustice is going on. And Jesus came for the oppressed. God is talking about, like, what did he say? Driving swords into plowshares or something like that. Like in the Old Testament, God has in the laws, like if aliens are walking through your land, let them glean from your grain. And, you know, all these you take care of aliens and just all sorts of things. Justice. He's against oppression. He talks about visiting and taking care of people who are in jail and all of these things. And so children are put in cages, and I'm seeing members of the congregation like, well, their parents should have followed the law. And they're saying this publicly on social media, and leadership's not addressing it, I guess, because as Asha said, we don't get involved in civilian affairs, whatever that means. Almost slipped out an expletive. So if you don't have your earbuds in, put them in because we're getting riled up. Whatever that means. And George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And I'm seeing all these people who are supposed to be my brothers and sisters. They should have complied, and all of this, and race and gender will be another topic that we'll dive into. So I'm not going to go too far, but I'm really feeling some sort of way. I'm really feeling some sort of way. And long story short, they fail every test. The church, the leaders fail every single test. So, and like I said, that's a whole other episode, so I won't go deep into it, but it had gotten too much. I was a part of the task force. That was extremely disappointing and stressful. And so, oh gosh, there's so much I'm not saying, but it was bad. And so I start feeling like, all right, guys, all of this injustice is happening, and you're making it political and not spiritual. Like these are God's children too. Like our Black people, are brown people, not God's children too, but they're making it political. And then when I'm trying to speak up about it, it's getting the same treatment Asha was talking about. Like, oh, now, oh, well, let's look at it this way. Oh, let's not look at it this way. Let's tone it. Don't make posts like that. And then people won't be so angry with you. I'm like, okay. So that's all. I'm upset. That's not good. So I'm in the book club. I'm getting validated. I'm thinking things. Then that's all 2020. Then early 2021, I go to a, what is it called? Like a community service event that one of the guys in the church put on with his wife. And one of the lead evangelists was there. And guys, he's a big deal. Like he leads, I think he disciples or oversees everybody in Virginia. Him and his wife travel to New Zealand to disciple the leaders there. And they do conferences all over the world, and they speak. And he's like ICOC famous, at least on the East Coast, and then, you know, over there. So there was a letter that had gone out, or a post that had gone out about the Portland, Oregon church, because the Portland, Oregon church, can you believe they wanted to let women preach the word of God? Right. Can you believe that? Oh, the ICOC was in an uproar. And so basically they've been served a letter saying, if you don't stop that, we will remove you from our family of churches. And so a lady, I don't know who she was, but I love her very much. She had this long post. I think she was an ex-member, and she was basically like, if the ICOC doesn't know how to learn how to love, they're going to fall apart. Like they address the letter, the situation, they address the views on the LGBTQ community, like so many communities. And so this evangelist, I almost said his name, This evangelist, he texted me, didn't even text me when my mom died, which I wasn't expecting him to, because we don't have that kind of relationship. I was not expecting a text from him. But if you didn't text me then, why are you going to text me about me sharing that lady's post? Oh, because it's about control. So he texted me, hey, I saw you made this post. Do you have any questions? And so at first I was going to be like, no, it's very plain. But I'm in education, and, I have studied brain-based education for like the last 10 or so years. So I'm like, have an active mind. You should always think of a question that you can always be a learner. So what did I ask? I was like, oh, is there more to the story I should know? And he said, there always is. You should really seek input before sharing something like that. And I don't know if I responded or not. Maybe I just said, okay. Anyway, he shows up at this community service event. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And of course he approaches me. And he basically says, like, I never would have posted that. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And he was like, what a shame. What a shame if this is actually how we feel about the body of Christ. And I said, it is a shame. It is a shame that these things are happening. I just thought it was so provocative. It's like, yeah, but I have a group of friends and we all think that it's accurate. And I don't remember what he said. I was probably disassociating, honestly. But he was just going on and on about some formalities. And I just said, if you would like to talk about this more, I'm willing to meet with you. And he never said anything about that. And then we got called over to rally for the event. And that was the end of that. So the reason that story is important is because initially I felt like, yeah, I stood up to leadership, because you don't do that. That's like, if you don't just bow down and say, you're right, I'm sorry, how could I? Yeah. Then you're in sin. You're prideful and arrogant and stiff-necked and all the things. So I was like, yeah, I stood up to him, and I was feeling good for like an hour or two. But after that, I don't know if I had a panic attack, but I was jacked up. I was so nervous. My stomach was in knots. I was uneasy, had the restless, uneasy feeling in my chest, like thoughts running through my head. Oh my God, he's probably going to tell his wife. What is his wife going to think? What are they going to say at staff? Like all these things, right? And then it dawned on me, when my own mother made me feel this way, I cut her off.
Right.
You are not even my blood family, which they will argue against. There's so many layers to this. But like, you are not even technically related to me. I don't need this stress. This is unhealthy. You're literally impacting my health now, that I feel so nervous because I disagreed with you. That's not healthy. That's not safe. Like, you should not, my spiritual leader should not be making me feel this way. And so I think maybe a couple days before then or something, I found out that a good friend of Asha's, who used to be a leader in our area, her and her husband, they had moved away, but I found out that she had left the church, the ICOC church, even though she was in like another region, another part of the state. And I was like, what? She left? Which honestly is probably how people felt when Asha and I left, because I mean, like, there's leader worship and you just, whatever. So she left? Can I get her number? Can I talk to her? And so she was gracious enough, and we had a conversation the very next morning, and she just shared with me what she experienced, which it's similar to what Asha and I experienced. It's similar to what any other person on YouTube that you listen to has experienced. And that was just the validation I needed to pull the plug. And so that morning I sent the text, guys, this is causing me stress. It's causing me too much stress to be a part of this fellowship. And I didn't text everybody, just I think the people that I thought would be hurt if they heard it through the grapevine. The people, that I had more of a genuine connection with. I was like, let me just tell them directly, and then other people will find out as they find out. Like, it's not like I've been going anyway. And I think I had stopped tithing already, because I was like, I'm not paying y'all. Like, I'm not paying you for this. I don't think you're doing God's work, so I'm not giving you money to further your mission. So yeah, that's when I pulled the plug. So to roll into, what's going on, I was thinking about doing this video. I think I had the idea maybe a week or two ago, and I was kind of sitting on it, hemming and hawing. But then Jesus said, hold up, I got a sign for you. So if you are not aware, if you are not in the ICOC circles, go Google Rolling Stones ICOC. Okay, that's it. The Rolling Stones ICOC. And that was like, okay, it's time. And so basically, it's people coming forward and talking about the controlling nature of the church, and then also several instances of pedophilia and sexual abuse. And what's sad is they talk about the reason it took them so long to come forward is because of the gaslighting from the leaders and the culture that's in place to protect the leaders and all the things like that you don't speak up. So, Asha, I want you to speak about what you know of the culture in the ICOC that allowed for something, that's like what's talked about in the Rolling Stones article to be able to happen.
Wow, okay. Where to begin? When you get down to it, there is this persona or this image of this particular fellowship that we are the ones who truly follow Jesus. We are the ones who have it right. We have the scriptures. We are God's plan A. There is no plan B. And that is the indoctrination that so many people have. So much so that, like Nikita has said, there is this worship of people who are elevated to leadership in this environment. This is, I think it's some feedback, Nikita. That's interesting. Let me turn down my volume.
Oh, I don't hear any feedback.
Okay, good. So this is God's one true kingdom. So when someone is chosen to be a leader, it is, the idea is pushed that they are chosen by God himself. And this is God's one true church. This is his kingdom. And this person was picked to be a leader in this environment. How can I have anything bad to say about them? There is leader worship, right? So, this person was chosen by God, so whatever they say is so important, because how special must this person be to be brought into leadership in God's one true church? So that is a big part of the environment that we're working within. So you already—
let me say something.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, and so to piggyback onto like how they communicate that, one scripture that they use with the laymen, the regular members, it's Hebrews 13:17. Have confidence in your leaders and submit to their authority, because they keep watch over you as those who must give an account. Do this so their work will be a joy, not a burden, for that would be of no benefit to you. Yeah. And then other versions of this same scripture, that was the NIV version, but many other versions, instead of saying have confidence in your leaders, it says obey your leaders. And so that type of thing is communicated. And then even for leaders, they are groomed. And so to believe that they are God's mouthpiece, literally, I was in a campus ministry internship for the summer. It was like a summer internship, and the whole theme of the summer was like the voice of God or something. And let me see if I can find the scripture. One thing that they repeated over and over as we met together that summer for different training meetings, it was 1 Peter 4:11. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. So we were told this repeatedly. When you speak, you should be confident. Don't be ashamed. Timothy was young and he led a whole church because, mind you, we're college students. But
Yeah.
we are being told that we can correct and admonish people, our peers and people older, if they're not very degreed, or if they were baptized in the marrieds ministry and not the campus ministry, because this is a whole thing too. People baptized in the marrieds ministry don't have real convictions.
Yeah.
They're different. They don't understand. But with that, the whole, if anyone speaks, even though it says if anyone speaks, that doesn't apply to the average member.
Right.
Like if a random like Bible Talk member tries to say it, then they just need to be humble and not be led by their emotions and not be so arrogant and presumptuous. And again, trust and obey your leaders.
Yeah.
But for the leader, you're groomed that every word you say, inspired by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So, okay, I just wanted to add some support to what you were saying.
Absolutely. So yes, so there's this idea of the leaders, and then all along you as someone who is not in leadership is groomed and taught through the misuse of scriptures that you cannot trust yourself. Humility is equivalent to turning over all of your autonomy. Thinking for yourself is pride.
Yes.
And God hates pride. Pride is the one thing that's going to separate you from God. And here's the deal. You don't know if you're prideful because pride is like a necklace. The Bible says that. Pride is like a necklace. And the Bible doesn't say that. I dare you to find that. It's again, the misuse of a scripture. So you can't see it, other people can. So you are taught, which is a part of the BITE model, a part of the E for BITE, you know, it's an acronym. The E is emotional control, where you are taught to mistrust your own thoughts, your own emotions. But we were taught to do that, but it was considered humility. God is pleased with you for not trusting your own thoughts and handing that torch over to us. So there is this, you know, God-like feeling toward these leaders. And it's even heightened even more because you're taught not to trust your own self. So the whole system is set up to make certain people extremely powerful, certain people extremely vulnerable. And so you don't have your own brain. You are delegating out all of your major decision-making to this leadership structure. You need them to be right. You need them to be holy. You need them to be righteous, because how are you going to make it? You can't make it alone. You need people. There's no lone wolf. You know, Christ is the head and the body, you know, is the church is his body. With us is the only way you're connected to Jesus at all. There's a lot of fear mongering mixed in with this spirituality. And you just want to make it. You just want to make it to heaven. And so in order to keep the structure where people feel like the leadership can completely be trusted in the ICOC, people who are in ministry on staff, elders, if you get the label elder, oh my God, evangelists, women's ministry leader, they are literally like celebrities. People wait in line after services to go talk to them, you know.
And not just talk to them, but like ask them a question for advice.
Yes.
And like you can't leave because you must know what they think about how you should handle this situation. Like there will be lines of like 10 people waiting to talk to a person.
Because how else are we going to know? You know, there's very much this us versus them environment that's created as well. The only thing that can be trusted is what comes from within this group. You know, so you claw at access to these people who are going to guide you spiritually. You start to crave their approval. You know, their approval means God's approval. You know, and it is woven in every single lesson. It is woven in every discipleship time, where you get with somebody and you confess your sins, is woven in there. Well, were you being more individualistic? Is that why? You needed to get advice. You should have been hanging with people more. You should have been with us. It's everything is give yourself over to us. That's how you're going to survive. And your reality gets very distorted. So in a system like that, of course, the next thing to happen would be something like what we're seeing in a Rolling Stones article. People are already primed to give over their autonomy, primed to trust the leadership completely and wholly, you know, to the point where we would have never even questioned if something like this was going on. And speaking of, you know, the bite model, I know we might talk about that later. I remember coming across it. And of course, another panic attack happened, right? If you have not come across the bite model.
I mean, yes, go ahead and talk about it. Go ahead and talk about it.
The bite model is Stephen Hassan's bite model of authoritarian control. And B is for behavior control, I is for information control, T is for thought control, and the E is for emotional control. And then it is broken down into a very extensive list. And so everything on this list, check, 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 check. But you would be surprised. What's amazing about it is that all of these things on this list were spiritualized. And I would have come across this list years earlier and said, well, of course, this is what it looks like to actually be righteous and want to be held accountable. They're just holding you accountable. And you don't realize that your identity has been demonized. Your autonomy has been kidnapped. And that's not righteous. Your brain has been infiltrated. I remember looking at the newest Spider-Man movie, spoiler alert, where Doc Ock finally gets the chip pulled from his neck and his eyes open and he's like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, that's how I felt when I started opening my eyes to what had been done. I felt like a zombie or I don't know if it's a zombie, what's another word? Like the body snatchers. If you look at, I can't think of the movie now. Yeah, Body Snatchers. Someone else was in my brain guiding me. I was making decisions that weren't really my own. But I thought that that's what it took to be a real Christian, because people who really love God don't hold on to their life, right? Nikita used that scripture earlier, give up everything. What good is it to gain the whole world and forfeit your very soul? So you deny yourself. And all of these words are in the Bible. Context is what was blown out of proportion, right? You deny yourself. You die to yourself. And this is what it looks like. It's what we were told it looks like. You don't make any major decisions in your life without okaying it with someone, because that's what God wants. Yeah, that's what God wants. So in this environment, someone hurting a child in this church, I can see a person being more afraid of harming the image of the church than protecting this innocent life, which is absolutely disgusting. I want to say it's completely and utterly disgusting, but I'm just giving you an idea of the environment that allowed this to happen. And you're encouraged to deal with any issues within the church in-house. So you're dealing with the issue with the people who are creating the environment that allowed it to happen.
And we know that because churches are like putting out letters. Yes. ICOC churches are like putting out letters to address this, the article. And we were able to see several. There's an Instagram account called Wound of My People, and that account was like publishing some of the letters from churches across the country. And a common theme was stay open, communicate, don't suffer by yourself. Like, let's deal with this together. Talk to us, talk to your Bible talk leaders, let's deal with it together and deal with this spiritually. And so one of our friends who was also in the book club, she copied and pasted the letter into our chat. And she was like, I let them know all the red flags I saw. And so I was tired. I was so tired that night. And I was like, okay, you got to help me out. What? I don't see the red flags. Because to me, it's like they said it was bad. They used scripture about like love and truth, and then they were like, let's talk about it. They're not suppressing it, and so I'm like, what happened? And then she pointed it out, and she said, they're telling them to be open and talk amongst themselves, so then they can go back and tell them what to think. Yeah. And the types of things that they're telling them. I've been sitting on this one. So I'm not going to say his name. Someone, we have an inside source who went to a Tuesday or Wednesday service in Richmond, Virginia, and the evangelist there, this is a quote. He quoted and forwarded the quote from the evangelist regarding the Rolling Stones article. So this is directly in response to the article. He says, Lordship helps us to walk like Jesus and teaches us to forgive others, even abusers. He said, even abusers. Lordship helps us to love and extend mercy to not only the oppressed, but the oppressors. So I was already mad, the whole oppressed and oppressor thing, when this applied to the whole Black Lives Matter movement, right? But like pedophilia, children, sexual abuse, what in the world? You're going to talk about forgive others, even abuser? Like, what are you talking about from the pulpit? And so the guy who sent the quote, I think, was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, but he was like, well, maybe he was nervous. He didn't know what to say. And I mean, he did out him as this is bad. But then he said that like, maybe he didn't know what to say. But my thought is like, so you say that?
Exactly.
About a pedophile? Are you kidding me?
You don't know what to say. Like, that sounds like a practiced statement. Come on.
Like, and if you're addressing something of this magnitude, and especially if you don't know what to say, notice this is just a YouTube video. This is just a YouTube video talking about our life. And I wrote down my disclaimers at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, sir, you are paid. You are paid to spread God's word and guide people. And that's what you have to say to an article about your family of churches hiding pedophilia? Get out of here. Stop it right now. And so when our friend was like, oh, they're saying talk about it in-house, so that way they can say these kinds of things to them when they bring it up. And then this is what I wanted to say, how Asha said there's fear mongering. You notice how he says, Lordship helps us to walk like Jesus and teaches us to forgive. So now, if you are unwilling to forgive, who's really Lord of your life?
You said Jesus.
Is it Jesus? Or are you your own God? We don't view people from a worldly point of view. That's 2 Corinthians 5. That's drilled into your head. You don't view people from a worldly point of view. The old has gone, the new has come. Oh, don't be the unmerciful servant. If you don't forgive, your sins will not be forgiven. About a pedophile. And other sexual assault and abuse. Like, and stealing people's autonomy and causing people to go into panic attacks. Like, get out. Stop it. And then, so that was Richmond and that was Nova. But then our good old home, Hampton Roads. Asha, I think you would word it better. Tell them what the Hampton Roads people said, allegedly. Allegedly. I'm going to put this one on you.
So let me tell you, this is alleged because they weren't going to put out nothing publicly. Okay? It was secretly. All right? So it was a very closed behind doors message to active members that they felt like wouldn't reach outside. So of course it said some of the typical things of, we stand with the victims. This was a horrible thing, you know. We don't think that this was right in any way. But nothing like this has happened here. Now, instead of asking the people, hey, this is crazy. If something like this has happened, we need to know. They're telling people nothing like this has happened here, which I have learned from several people that that's not the truth. Okay? Not the truth. I don't know it, so it is hearsay, but I trust the sources. So they're telling them that it hasn't happened here. And then they're telling them to also deal with it in-house. If you have any concerns, come to a leader, the same leaders who covered up the other ones, right? Not the same exact people, but this system of leadership. And and then they say, and also, by the way, we want you all to just get off of social media. Don't interact or engage with any discussions about the Rolling Stones article. Thanks. We care about you, so actually get off of social media, though. Stop looking at what people have to say about us and don't engage. Behavior control, information control. You are telling adult people who have
adults
children, who have their own children that they want to protect. Don't go back onto social media and engage with this. Why? Why can't I? If you're so innocent, why can't I go back online and engage with this? Why don't I have a right to know about what was going on in this church so that I can protect my own children? And, you know, I went on Facebook yesterday and just kind of typed in the search bar ICOC lawsuit. And I just saw a slew of people who left the church, I don't know, years and years ago, just feeling so vindicated, you know, typing out things. And I ended up on a comment thread of a person's post and started dialoguing with a person. And this person, we were very similar in that this person, just like me, left at 21 years. And she was telling me, well, you know, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. She was like, it was a big scandal in like 2009-ish, 2010-ish. I was like, I heard nothing about it. She was like, yeah, they made sure that it was. And she sent me an article. This person actually was so bad, they were prosecuted. It was in Denver, Colorado. One of the teen leaders, you know, like I was, a teen leader, assaulted 3 different people.
Oh, no.
It was in the news. This person was prosecuted. But do you think that's something that this church decided to talk about? No. And then these people are taught to trust your kids 1,000% over to the teen leaders, because they're not really your children. They belong to God, and you shouldn't be protecting your children against God. That's why you have the teen ministry, because they're willing to tell your children things that you aren't willing to tell them. So these parents, whoever they were, completely and totally trusted their children.
Wow.
And this is what happened to them. This is the system that these parents were in, trusting their children. And do you think we all found out about it? No. I was shocked.
Wow.
And, you know, as I looked at the bite model, like I said, check everything. The one thing I didn't see was sexual abuse. I was like, well, at least that's not a part of this group, because I felt very safe here as far as like physical assault, right? But I couldn't help but to think, if this organization checks off every single thing on this bite model except that, is it that I just haven't heard about it yet? And sure enough, that's exactly what it is. And why haven't we heard about it? It's buried. Let's not talk about that. Let's not heal and figure out what we did wrong to set these people up in this situation. And instead of sitting there and saying, and to deal with this, talk to your ministry leader and get off of social media, they should be saying, if any of this has ever happened to you, contact authorities ASAP. Because guess what? That's what real repentance would look like. They're always telling us what real repentance looks like. Because all of this grace and mercy that they have for themselves as leaders and as this organization, it does not get extended to you as a member. You're not showing up. You see what happened when I stopped showing up to stuff when I was trying to heal during the pandemic. I immediately got added to a list. People were automatically writing me off as a fall away. And for those of you who don't understand, in ICOC, when you're considered a fall away, you're considered pretty much, it's like excommunication, like you're not a part of God's kingdom anymore. I literally got condemned to hell. Okay, that's what happened.
Oh, wait. when I messaged that I wasn't going to be in the church anymore, Horace told me, because we were Bible Talk leaders at the time, that one of the ladies in our group, the husband reached out and said that she was like weeping.
Yeah.
Oh. It was like I had died.
It's the worst thing you can do is leave this church.
Isn't it so funny? Because I think I texted her and was like, hey, I love you. I value you. Like, we can keep in touch. I don't even think she responded to that text message. Maybe she was just too hurt. And I don't blame her. She is so sweet. And her husband, they're white. And they were so compassionate and genuinely curious and wanting to learn about like the struggles of being Black in America and also in the church. And like, they were so great. And so I blame the system that she really believes like, I'm not a part of the church, I'm doomed to hell. But she wept, according to the husband, and then never texted me again.
Because there's such a strong insider versus outsider feel and structure set up. When you step outside of this system, you no longer exist. And you're also going to hell. So
except for the purpose of trying to reconvert.
Yeah. Let's get for coffee, get together for coffee means let me get you back to thinking the way I do. And that'll go on for a few weeks, maybe, depending on how bad they want you back. And then if you're like, no, I am fine here. This is actually a safe space for me. I'm healing. I'm actually doing well. You won't hear from them again.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, it didn't work. I don't actually care about you as a person. I mean, when you were in this group, that was one thing, but now I don't know what to do with you.
So funny. After I left, one person whom I love, and I've heard that she's grown and changed in a lot of ways, and she's been a mentor to me. Like, I'm indebted to her and her husband in many ways, helping me get on my feet financially after graduating college. But anyway, she found out she was also part of the Unity Task Force. And so she called me and was like, hey, how's it going? Where are you at? What are you thinking? Do you still want to come to Bible talk sometimes? And I was like, no, I'm done. And so then she was like, and then I said, like I'm open to hanging out, but I don't really want to do that. Like, I'm not doing the meetings. I don't want to hear any of the rhetoric. I don't want any of it. So then she says, and I hope, I've heard she's grown and changed and her eyes are open and things like that. So girl, I love you. But you got to laugh at yourself for this one. So she asked me, do I want to come to Bible talk? I said no. So then she says, well, how would you feel if maybe you came over like once or twice a month and, we could have dinner together and I could invite some of the sisters over and, maybe, we could eat and then we could just look at a few scriptures and talk about them. And so I said no. I was like, that's okay. But then I got off the phone and was talking to my husband and I was like, I told her I didn't want to come to Bible talk. And then she just described what a Bible talk was. And she's like, well, how about if I word it this way? I was like, no, I don't want it.
So
it's like saying, oh, do you want a sandwich? No, thanks. I don't like sandwiches. Okay, well, I could make you this dish where like it would be bread. And then in between, if I just added some meat and some lettuce and maybe like mayonnaise and put it together, would you be interested in that? What?
That's exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. Oh my God. It's the system. It is the system.
Yeah. And I do believe that she was genuinely trying to keep me like maybe as a friend. And I think she thought she was doing a good job of maybe like shepherding me spiritually, making sure that I didn't ultimately fall away and leave God and be condemned to hell. Like, I do think that it came from a good place, but I was like, what in the world? Let me go.
But it's unfortunate though. It comes from a good place because of what this person has been brainwashed to believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that people think that I have, left my husband and probably a meth addict by now.
Oh man, from my social media, like I use sounds that have profanity. I wore a crop top. I had cleavage in my last one of my
Not
recent videos on
cleavage.
TikTok. We'll talk about that in another one too. What else? I don't know. Blasting my mom. So, I'm
Oh my God.
basically a pagan at this point.
Yeah, like what are you doing?
Can't know the love of God anymore.
Me and my husband, we were honestly so surprised that like we're still like good people after we left. That we still like love each other and want to treat each other well, raise our children well, still want to love God. That's crazy.
Yeah, because they just make it sound like if you're not in this church, you are morally depraved and you don't know right from wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to love anybody truly, because how can you truly love someone if you're not connected to the love of Christ?
No.
And how can you forgive someone if you don't understand the forgiveness of Christ? And you have no moral compass.
No moral compass.
So, and no one to guide you or correct you from your faulty thinking. You're just out here making decisions willy-nilly. Like,
wow, you might make a mistake. And that would be so unfortunate.
Because you're unwise. Folly is a sin. So
your thoughts are unwise. That's a part of the emotional control in the Bible. And that is what people are pretty much told. You know, you just don't have wisdom.
No.
Everyone has it. You just don't. And you have to figure it out. Not just from anybody though. Trusted sources. We decide who those trusted sources are.
Oh yeah, because then they always ask you, especially if it doesn't like align with what they're thinking, you tell them, I got advice, and then it's always
from who?
From who?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that person's not doing well. Or it's, well, they couldn't have meant it that way. If it is someone that they approve, they couldn't have meant it that way. And then on the totem pole, don't let that person be a step below this person that you're talking to, because when they leave you, they're going to go disciple that leader. Why would you tell them that? Why would you tell them that? And so I actually, was I in the, I don't remember what ministry I was in. Anyway, I had a friendship with this girl, young woman, for a couple years. She had been in the teen ministry. I don't know if she ever did campus or whatever, but she was in and out of the church off and on. I think she had gotten baptized, but which is common. A lot of teens and even some young campus people, they feel this pressure. And so they study the Bible, they go through this series, and they get baptized. But then it comes out, I was just pleasing my parents. I was just tired of the teen leaders asking me to study. I wanted to be accepted by all my friends in the church. And so I think that was her situation. And so she would come in and out. Now I want to study. Now I don't want to study. I think I want to repent. I don't want to repent. And we would hang out. And I was like a trusted person to her. We had a good bond. It's so funny. I think because I could always kind of, even though I was totally brainwashed. But in some ways, I connected a lot with like the children of members of churches who felt like outsiders. And they always felt like I was a safe place because I was genuinely interested in their lives. And so I had formed a relationship with this young woman. And so whenever she would want to come back, she would kind of hit me up or talk to me, or they would pull me into her Bible studies. And so I started noticing she comes back when she breaks up with people, or they break up with her, or things aren't going well or whatever. And so finally I had a talk with her, and I was like, and she was living with her parents at the time. And I was like, girl, how did I say it? I was like, you're wasting, which is totally, totally bad, but I was brainwashed. You're wasting God's time. And you're wasting our time, and you're wasting your time. Like, I really don't think you want this. I just leveled with her. I was like, I don't think you want this. You don't have to study the Bible if you don't want to study the Bible. Like, every time something goes wrong, the answer isn't necessarily to just study the Bible. You don't have to keep doing this. I feel like based on your pattern over the last few years, you don't want this. And she was like, well, my parents this and this and that. And I think she'd been out of high school a year or two at this point. And I said, move out. Move out and have your own space and live your own life. And so I think she liked that. And so she made plans to do it. And I got a call from her mom. a week or two later, who was a member of the church, a leader in the church, an important figure. Not necessarily on staff, but there are, especially in different congregations, there are like pillar people who have been there for a long time. And
those pillar people,
yeah, they're like,
the meanest.
yeah, yeah, they're like pillar people. And her and her husband, very sweet in many ways. So if you guys are watching this, I love you. This is just another example. And if somebody else were to make a video about, especially their time in the campus ministry, I'm sure they would have a lot of examples of horrible things that I did and said to them. So I'm not like, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just telling stories. Okay. And so she calls me and basically says, like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not a mom. I don't appreciate this. That wasn't wise. Did you get advice about giving that advice? Like, no mom wants their child to just move out of the house. And, you know, I was listening and I was agreeing because that's what I do. I just agree. But in my head, I was like, but she's like old enough to move out and she doesn't want to follow your rules. Like, why would you want to just keep her there? Like, I understand that you could be worried about your child going off into the world, but like, I mean, if she can get a job and pay for it or a roommate and she doesn't want to live by your standards and she's telling me that she feels like a failure because she's not living up to your standards and you guys are disagreeing. So in my head, I'm like, I still kind of stand by it. But she was just like discipling and correcting me about how I had no right to say that to her daughter and that it was unfounded.
You made the mistake of seeing her daughter like as a person. Like, what are you doing? You just forgot. Her daughter is this product that she has to convert into this church to feel good about her.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And
so anyway, yeah.
Position, she was in her mom's house. Now she won't be as vulnerable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how that happens. Which I'm sure you know. I'm saying that for the video. And I'm sure she loves her daughter. And again, she's part of the system. But that is why you got chewed out.
Yeah. I mean, things are going well now. The daughter's doing great. She has her own family and they, you know, you can only tell so much from social media, but they seem happy. So, you know,
of course,
they all seem happy together.
You said they are. Of course. But at that moment, that was the concern. Because all those things you're saying, and see, I was a very good member. I understood the behind the scenes rules. I just truly believe that they were righteous. Like sometimes I listen to stuff you say and I'm like, you did that?
And this is while I was still like brainwashed. I think that's maybe why they liked me. I thought I was following the rules, but maybe I wasn't doing a good job.
You're like, girl, you don't have to study the Bible. You said you don't have to study. I'm done.
Why would you say that to her? Why would you say that to her?
You don't say that. And you're like, just move out. You seem not to like your mom's rules. She had never thought of that before because no one.
Because at this point, like I had been going along for the ride, but I think this was like the 5th or 6th time I've been asked to study the Bible with her. And I was like, y'all notice the pattern. Notice the pattern, okay? Like I'm all for the system and converting people at that point. But like this one is very obvious. Like she doesn't want to do this.
Oh, they knew it. They knew it. But hey, she was in a position and they wanted it to work.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I don't know how many teams that would do this back and forth thing. And you would just get to the point like, why do you really want to do this? Like, tell me why you're really here. And the answer would be, I just want my parents to trust me. I noticed that other people who convert into this church and do the things that, you know, this church wants them to do, their relationship with their parents get better. Their parents trust them. There's this connection that I don't have with my parents because I have not yet become a member of this church. That is a universally felt thing.
Which is so sad.
It is.
It's so sad. But because a parent's kind of value and reputation is directly correlated with their child's status, kind of like spiritual status, which is interesting because, again, it means different things based on who you are. So if you are one of the pillar couples, or you're on staff, or you have an official role or something, and your child has either left the church, fallen away, or is not wanting to get baptized, then it's pray for them. They're really discovering themselves. They're not disciples yet. What else do they say? Just like they're on a journey. The parents are having such a hard time. But if it's just the average member, then it's like, oh, well, the example they have in their home, like it's not going so great. Like the parents really have to work on their faith, or, well, they don't always come to midweek, or, well, they let them do sports when they were in school. So they thought that going to church wasn't important, or like, there's just always something that, like, if there's some reason why it's the parents' fault if they're not one of the special elevated couples.
Exactly.
So,
which is why this mother was so desperate to, no matter how many times it took, she was desperate. That's where that comes from. That's a whole other side to it. So the reason there's this lack of connection is because this parent has this pressure on them of their kid becoming a disciple, right? Becoming a member of ICOC is what becoming a disciple is.
Yeah.
You can become a disciple elsewhere, but that is not known as a member of ICOC.
Right.
And so it's pressure, and people are looking at you sideways when your child is not converting over into this church. I remember, because I became a member in 1999. I remember there being an actual lesson that there must be some sin in your family if your child is not baptized by like 13 years old. There must be sin. You must be doing something wrong. And so this is what parents were told. So you're in this controlling environment where approval is weaponized constantly. You've given over your autonomy. You have no identity. Your personality is gone because your personality was evil. This is the only place where you can go to heaven. And then people who are in control of that are these leaders. Their approval equates to how good you are with Christ. So you're constantly on a treadmill trying to reach to this carrot. You're running. This carrot is dangling. You can never get to it because you're just running in place all the time. And every now and again, you might get a bite of the carrot. You might get close enough just to get a bite. And you get this temporary moment of approval that just makes you feel so happy. And then it's like, all right, that was yummy. That was a little breadcrumb. Now get back to work. So people were always clawing at approval from these leaders, right?
Yeah.
Approval equated to God's approval. So now there's a standard that there must be some sin in you if your child has not become a member of this church by a certain age. These parents had that in their head. These people are walking around feeling like there is something wrong with me. I remember going to a wedding, and it's a particular family who's very devoted to this church, amazing family. And I sat at the table with the wife and I asked how she was doing. And because I had been a teen leader for so long, I think her mind immediately went to the fact to her daughter. She assumed that that's really what I wanted to know, right? And she just kind of broke down. She was like, I'm doing good. I realized it's not on me. I can't control what my daughter does. She just frantically started, explaining to me that, I'm letting it go. I'm just letting it go. God's in control. I can't force her, and I'm becoming okay. It was like very hyper vigilant, very anxious, that I had sat down beside her and said, how are things going? Like she owed me an account of how her daughter was doing. It was this anxiety she carried with her all the time because her daughter was not interested in becoming a member of this church. It was a shame she carried around.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge thing with this church. Shame is weaponized. Shame and approval. It is a shame and approval, relationship with this church.
Yeah, for sure. And so, like, even thinking of back, if you guys remember earlier, I talked about the Portland church and the posts that the woman made and the letters that were put out, like pretty much a cease and desist. Like, if you don't stop letting women preach, you can't be a part of us. And so my husband posted about it, and the same head evangelist called him and was like, why would you post that? And, you know, this, that, and the third, and was trying to pretty much gaslight him about it. And my husband was like, oh, well, there were more letters. I don't know if it was one or if there were two more, but there was more to it. And this evangelist was like, what? There's more? And so my husband was like, yeah, and pretty much detailed what was in them and things like that. But because my husband wouldn't take down the post, because my husband's thought was, let's have healthy dialogue. Like, it's happening. Instead of whispering in the corners, let's have a public discussion. Like, let's be adults about this, you know? And so the evangelist was like, you need to take it down. He didn't say it just like that, but he might as well have. And actually he might have. But anyway, because my husband refused to, the evangelist told him that he was being prideful. And so my husband is very self-assured. He's very confident. It's kind of annoying sometimes, honestly. He's not arrogant. He's not arrogant. He's just very, very secure. I love that for him. I'm trying to get there. So he's not shaken at all. Like, dude, what are you talking? I know more about this topic than you. Like, I'm not saying I know everything. I'm not saying I know more in general than you, but about this topic, you didn't even know that there was more literature out there. Like, literally, I know more than you right now. And so it's just very interesting that because my husband wouldn't take it down, he's prideful. But even though my husband is presenting information and the evangelist is not willing to listen or ask questions, he's not prideful. It couldn't be him. It must be my husband. But the leaders, they just get away with these kinds of things, like who's going to check them, which is why something like the Rolling Stones situation can happen. And so then even thinking more about the type of things they get away with, found out from a guy in the church, and he and his wife, like me and my husband, we're cool with them. I think they're great people. They're fun. They're funny, whatever. And so that guy, the cool guy, such a lame qualifier. I don't know. But anyway, him. I'm trying not to use names because it's YouTube, which is so funny because in our like Marco Polo thread, people will try to be diplomatic and I'm like, drop the names. Who is it? If they didn't want us to know, they shouldn't have said it. So now I'm trying to be diplomatic just because it's the World Wide Web and I don't know all the laws, and I am trying to be respectful because I'm not evil. So anyway, the cool guy calls my husband, and his discipler is the evangelist of the region we're in, and says, hey, so-and-so told me that you're like the leader of everybody who's leaving and you're trying to persuade people to leave, and pretty much said like he's like stirring up a rebellion and causing people to leave. Now, how do I say this? My husband is trying to get people to stay. Like, he respects me and supports me and my decision and my journey. And so I do my best to respect his. His thought is like, well, I see the mess. I know it's a cult. I know it's this. I know it's that. But maybe if I talk to the leaders and we have meetings, and it'll take time, but eventually they'll change. I trust that they want to please God. And that's where we differ. Right? Like, it's my disclaimer. Don't talk to me. I've tried. You clearly are just about yourself. So we differ there. But for me to like be going off the rails and venting about how fed up I am and how ridiculous and disgusting some of these situations are. And then my husband's like, well, I just think we need to pray, and it could take some years to change. Like, and I think the newer generation coming up wants to do things differently. Like, these are the things I have to listen to. Like, and for the evangelist to be going around telling people that this man is leading a rebellion and like trying to get people to fall away, and he's the leader of everyone who's leaving. I was hot. Like, you hurt me, you abused me, you had me wrapped up in this system.
Yeah.
Fine, I'm hurting, I'm healing, I'm dealing with it. You
Mhm.
said what about my man? That's not even true. Then I looked up the definition. I'm like, this is literally slander. This
really
is slander, because who knows how many other people that you're telling this to. So there is a women's ministry leader who lives in another area of the state, whose husband kind of like ruffles some feathers because he's more progressive than, you know, the rest of the churches. So I was like, oh, she might be able to relate. Maybe she can give me some advice. And I didn't really seek her out necessarily, but I was at my mother-in-law's house for the holidays, and she came over to eat, and she's always been nice enough. I don't know her personally. So I was like, this isn't really a spiritual matter. It's like a wife matter, right? Like, people talking about your husband, people talk about her husband. I'm like, all right, ma'am, help me how to deal, because I'm about to burn it all down. So she says, well, you just need to pray and give it over to God. You don't want to be vindictive, because if you're vindictive, that never feels good, and God's going to handle it, and God's going to expose it. And so I listened for a long time, was just kind of nodding, and I was just going to let myself get through the conversation. But I was like, you know what? I don't want her to walk away thinking that I agree with her. So I was like, you know, if I were to bring it up or say something or post something, I wouldn't see it as being vindictive. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to hold them accountable, and expose it and let people know what's true and what's going on. And no, God's going to do it. God's going to do it. So yeah. So then she was like, well, God handles it and will always expose it. And then, guys, it gets worse. She tells me about an evangelist who had been an evangelist a very long time, and I think the Northern Virginia church, older white couple. And he said that no Black couple will ever lead that church. And she told me that this was well known. Like, everyone in the congregation knew it. Other leaders knew it. Like, everyone knew that he said this, and he believed it. And when it was time for him and his wife to go away, to move, they interviewed all these couples, but not their right-hand couple, which was a Black couple, for years. And even people in the congregation was like, you're not even going to pretend to consider them. And so, long story short, a chain of events happens. They hire a white couple. It doesn't go well. A Black couple ends up leading, not their second-hand couple, though, a different Black couple. And she's like, so see, the very thing he didn't want to happen happened. And I was like, but who's going to hold him accountable? Like, he still said it and gets to be this way and was in leadership. And so it didn't really go anywhere. It was time to eat. But even that, like, brought something to the forefront, and it was spiritualized by let God handle it. You don't need to talk about it. Okay. And to be fair, when she used the word vindictive, when I was talking about it, I was kind of like, I could blow this whole spot up. Like, oh, you want to do that? Then let's talk about it. So I guess it sounded kind of vindictive, but she didn't even acknowledge that, like, I could see why you would feel that way. The truth needs to be brought about. Like, is this coming from a place of peace, or how can we, like, it wasn't even considered. No questions were asked. No, like, validation was given. It was just like, I know it's crazy. It is crazy. Can you believe people say these things? But you just got to let it go and let God handle it. Why? There are people who work at like CBS and NBC and ESPN. And when they get caught calling people niggers, they lose their jobs.
Yeah.
They lose their jobs.
Yeah.
Like, what? Just saying, if a public figure like that were caught or tweeted, a Black person will never run this company. They would be demolished.
And I want to point this out. This is recent. This just happened. This conversation you had with this leader, women's ministry leader, just happened. And this is the same church that is saying, bring all of your issues to us. This is the system that exists that allowed those children to get abused. You see her response to this person after this person comes to her and says, this leader has deliberately slandered my husband. And she looks at you and says, let God handle it.
And don't be vindictive. So that's I'm vindictive.
Don't be vindictive. This is the system that allowed these children to get abused. They're still doing it. She literally just did it. She literally said nothing about the slander. She literally used an example of a couple just getting away with murder as if justice was served. She gave an example of a couple getting away with just being racist, and now they've moved to another church to be racist, and she used it as an example of justice being served. That is psychotic. That is crazy. And she just was like, ta-da! Boom. God wins. And that's why we don't do anything. But if you do something, you better believe I'll kick you out. If you do something, you better believe I'll tell you you're being a vindictive, wicked person. If you do it, not these leaders, let God do it. And here's an example. Here's an example of nothing happening. I'm done. I'm done. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I'm calling it down. She gave you an example of nothing. And you were supposed to go, oh my God. Praise the Lord. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for yelling. I'm sorry for yelling into the camera, everyone. Sometimes this happens when ridiculousness presents itself to me. Full on ridiculousness. And this is the same church where this Rolling Stones article came out, and they're like, how could this have happened? It never happens with us, and it won't happen with us. And if it does happen with us, you deal with it with us. Like, what in the world?
So we can tell you not to be vindictive. Yeah.
Oh, but you're completely safe. You're completely safe here.
Yeah.
This is the stuff. If you are a part of ICOC and we were really close and I haven't talked to you because I just haven't answered the phone, I don't return your text, this is why. Because you see what I just did? You see that outburst I just had? If you say something that is that ridiculous, which you might because you're still a part of the system, I do not know what's going to come out of me. And I warned Nikita before this, so she knew. But I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't need to have this triggering moment. I don't need to yell at you. I'm just protecting both of us. So, all right.
Okay, so tell the story because we're not allowed to approach leaders or correct leaders. But if you offend a leader, they have free reign to create and seek their own justice and make it right with you. So you told a story earlier this week. If you need the name to jog your memory, it's in the docket. But this leader, and I think at one point, I think they abolished this system, but at one point there was this position called world sector leader. And it's like, it really is kind of like a pyramid actually. But this guy, this couple, they oversee like these couples who oversee these couples, but it's like for half the globe. And I don't know why one person needs that much control over so many churches and that much influence, probably to tell them like, okay, we're all going to focus on this thing. We're going to be unified as a movement. But anyway, he no longer holds that title as far as I know, because I don't think that title exists anymore. Maybe as a result of what happened in 2003. You can look up the Henry Crete letter. It was basically, it was the first or second rendition of what's happening now, like a mass exodus of the church because someone wrote a letter detailing all of the issues that are going on and how it's a cult and all of that. And really nothing has changed since then. But anyway, so I think after people got spooked with that letter, they might have done away with this, but I don't know all the details. Don't come for me. Anyway, this guy, this very, very important guy was based in Virginia Beach. Asha, tell the story of what you saw. And this is an example of how we can't come to leaders with our grievances about them, but they surely can approach us.
I mean, it's a million examples. It's a million. I mean, let's just think of all the people who got publicly disfellowshipped because they refused to change.
Well, it's the one where you saw him yelling.
Yes, that I know. So I'm gonna get there. This particular brother started to see the control. He just started to see it. And he started to speak about it. Now, this is before social media. You're kind of, if you leave the church, you're on your own. You have to heal on your own. You don't have a community really. And this person was particularly being attacked because I'm telling you, this environment is weird, y'all, right? You got to get permission to date somebody as a full-blown adult. You don't just date somebody. One does not just tell a sister they like them. I was talking about that today. That was an inside joke. Like you can't, you have to get permission. And the leaders have to decide whether or not you are worthy enough to date. And what I have realized is that it's really about when this couple gets together, are they going to influence each other against us, right? Mm-hmm. Are they going to end up caring about each other too much? And too much means to where you care about this person more than you care about this structure, this church. And so if they see you start to get too close, that's a threat to this organization. And so many people were broken up. Sometimes it was they flat out slept together, which is a huge no-no in this church, right? But a lot of times it was, I don't like how you guys hold hands. I don't like how much time you guys spend together. I just don't like how much y'all like each other. That is a threat to us. And so this person was told to break up with his girlfriend and they refused to do it. And the pressure got harder and harder. And this is someone who was a part of this church for decades, who had just been so devoted to this church. But he refused to do this one act of obedience and became the enemy of all the leaders, became the enemy of the main leader. And this person started to realize that this is a system of control, and he started to talk to people about it. People he cared about, warning them, like, this isn't right. It just hit him that this isn't right. And so apparently they got into an altercation. So we were meeting at a school, a high school during this time, and it was after service. And I guess they were challenging each other about this. And this person yelled at this leader and said, "Who are you? Who are you? Like, who are you to tell me how to live my life?" And this person said, "Who are you? You get out of here." And he just yelled at him and kicked him out, and he never came back. Just screamed at him, "You're out of here. Get out of my presence. I lead this church.
Get out of my presence."
You're gonna find out who I am now. Get out. And that was traumatizing to see someone treated like that simply because they didn't give in to your will. So there you go.
There you go.
I mean, it happened all the time. That type of stuff happened all the time. And you better believe that I'm guilty of I consider myself today, I said this earlier today, like, there's plenty of people that I've called to apologize to after I have left. Like, particularly people who've left the church, who I've tried to make stay, teens, that I used to lead, who I felt like, oh my God, I am so sorry. And every single person has been so gracious to me. And it's been like, oh, you were just doing what you were told to do as part of the system of everyone. Every issue I think about when I think back to the church, I don't really think about you. Like, you were always fine. You were a safe place. And I just was like, no, I wasn't. And then it kind of hit me. Y'all know on Finding Nemo, the first one, there's that fish with the little light. And they're like, oh, look at the light, look at that light. And they're like so enamored by this light. And then they found out there's a big fish behind it with these big teeth ready to eat them. That's what I was. That's called an anglerfish. I was an anglerfish. Okay. Yeah. I was one because shame and approval are weapons used in a power dynamic. That's the word I was looking for. There's a power dynamic that is set up for shame and approval. You're either in the shame box or you're in the approval box. And you're always more in the shame one. You're always more in the shame one. And you're just fighting for that approval, and sometimes you can get it, sometimes you can't. So when people had issues with constantly being shamed, the pressure, what I would do is I would validate them because I saw it too. I was like, yeah, I'm so sorry. I can see that. And because you're so used to being shamed, you're not used to that. You're not used to any form of validation. So I appear like this safe place. And there's lots of people in this church who are that. They're a safe place to get a little validation, to get some understanding, to get some empathy. But at the end of the day, we expect you to get it together and get back in the box where I am. Get back in. That's what I was. I was just an anglerfish. I'm sorry, everybody. So anyway, we were all part of the system of keeping people in. And there would be people who are getting challenged and beat up and, not physically, but, torn down. They won't give over their autonomy. And I was the perfect anglerfish to come in. People would call me, I want you to talk with this sister Asha. Because they knew. They didn't know what it was, but they knew something happened after people talked to me. So anyway, I was a person who was brought in a lot with these situations of people they wanted to break up. I was such a good example of what it looked like to put God first.
Which is basically just do everything the leaders tell you. Exactly. Do everything the leaders tell you.
Oh yes, thank you for that definition, because that's the real definition, right? Put God first is I will do everything the leaders tell me, which is really interesting. I have a story. So at one point, I've been in this church for a long time. At the point where I'm thinking about my career, because there's pressure to have kids if you're married. Okay, I'll throw that out there. That's societal pressure too, but definitely, is the case in this church. And I was thinking about,
and they spiritualize it.
And they spiritualize it. It was me thinking about my career and how I could handle, what type of career I can handle if I'm a mother. And the time I was working in a clinical setting, and I was so tired after, but I couldn't acknowledge that, because being tired is also bad. If you say you're tired, you're really just selfish, right? And you're not denying yourself for God. You can't actually be tired. They glorify people who push themselves to the point of dangerous exhaustion. That's who you want to be like. There you go. This person works so hard. Look at her. She's sick with some terminal condition, but she's still.
Oh my gosh. There were so many situations like that. They have a chronic illness. Look at her. She doesn't even feel well today, but she's here today. And the whole time, like, they can barely even speak, but they're there. Why are you here, ma'am? You should be home.
But no, that's an example for all of us, that you have no excuse ever.
Exactly.
And I decided I wanted to jump into this program because I thought it would give me this career that gave me more flexibility and all that stuff, so that maybe I could finally become a mom and make these people happy. Because I'm stuck in this hamster wheel of approval that I need constantly. But this program was 6 weeks every Wednesday night, and Wednesday night is midweek. You're not supposed to missing a regularly scheduled meeting is the worst you can do in this.
Because you're idolizing whatever you miss it for. You're making that your God.
That's your God now. And we're supposed to be your God. Duh. So
guys, we're not making this up. These are literal words that are said to you in private and from the pulpit.
And I knew that this program could help catapult me to where I wanted to be, which is also bad. You're also not supposed to be ambitious somehow. But if you already come into the church a doctor or a lawyer or stuff, that's okay. But if you're here, then and you're trying to pursue that, then no, because that's going to take up your time. But the people who already come in that way, they make us look good, so they can do whatever they want. That's a whole nother story. So I just was like, this is going to be tough. And I sincerely was anxious about how I was going to word my advice, my question of getting advice to allow people to let me go to this program. And that sounds very disturbing to even say, allow me, right? And I wrote a letter to all of the elders' wives at the time, because let me just go high. Let me just start from the top, right? And then I also told my discipler at the time. And my discipler was immediately annoyed. And she told me that I'm never satisfied. I'm always looking for something else.
Stop.
And you're just never content. She was threatened by this idea of me doing this program because it would take away time from me being with this church. And that's always a threat. That's always a threat. You might find out you enjoy life outside of this place. You can't do that. And so I just took it and I said, okay. And all of the elders' wives wrote me back and pretty much told me that missing midweek would be detrimental to me,
for 6 weeks.
Yeah, it would destroy me spiritually, even though I was a part of the team ministry, which means I was with people like 5-7 times a week. And so until the top one, the queen, mother, elder's wife, actually said, yeah, do it. And I was shocked. She was like, I mean, you've been a part of this church for like 15, 17 years or whatever I was at that point. Like, what is 6 weeks gonna do? Now, that was a miracle. That was actually a modern miracle, right? The reason everyone else told me no and spiritualized their no is because that's what they were trained to do. They never thought for 1 second that this person would say yes. And do you know, I walked around with that yes, like I had conquered the world. And then all the other people who told me no came to me to apologize. Now, this might sound like a good story, but it is not. It shows the power of the person at the top.
Right. They're just following behind.
And the people, I feel bad for them now. The people who came to me to apologize, y'all had the carpet pulled from under you. Because you only did what you were taught to do. You only gave the advice that you were trained to give. And then this person told y'all were ridiculous. The goalpost is always moving. It's always moving. But I remember, this shows how dysfunctional this environment was. Every time someone said, where were you on Wednesday? I said, I'm in this program and such sister okayed it. It would make them shrink. Their soul would leave their body. They came to me to convict me or fuss at me, but when I had that as a pass, so-and-so sister said it was fine. And it was
that is the pass.
That was my hall pass. And I was so proud of that. I was so proud that I had gotten to the point in my discipleship that this person could trust me to make a decision for my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the stuff that makes me want to sometimes jump off of a bridge. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, you did that. You did that. You were a grown woman, married, walking around with degrees, happy because someone gave you permission to go to a 6-week program for your life.
Yeah.
Just
because advice really was permission, right? Like when you think of advice, it's like, oh, okay, well, someone gave me their perspective, or like, here are the pros and cons, or this is what I would do, or whatever. But they would give advice. And then if you had the audacity to do something else, oh, there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. Death. You stiff-necked people, you will be brought swiftly to destruction, or whatever it says. And stiff-necked is like you're unwilling to turn, you're unwilling to see things a different way, their way. Yeah. And I know these well, right? Because not only were they told me, but I was trained to use them with other people because I was in leadership as well. Like, throw it out. Are you making every effort? You're just doing what you want. You're not being unified. You're not, whatever. Like, oh my gosh. Like,
yeah, you're not being unified. Yeah. You're not being part of the body. And you need to be part of the body to be connected to the head, which is Jesus. You have no connection to Jesus without us.
Yeah. Yeah. And to further why leaders thought that they could say anything to people and think that people should just listen to them. Another common scripture or example that was used, like if I go and confess that I'm not feeling confident, or I'm not feeling like I'm the right person to help in this situation, or I can't study the Bible with this person, which is probably valid because honestly, a lot of people, what they need is therapy. What they need is like licensed professional help, but they're sending these untrained people, oftentimes young and inexperienced, in with some scriptures. Anyway, what they'll tell you is, well, if God could speak through a donkey, he could speak through you. And that comes from a story. There's a story in the Bible where God does, send a message to this character, Balaam, through his donkey. And I'm just not sure why that should inspire us. Like,
that's what I was thinking. I was like, it was the constant use of these examples that do not apply to the current situations whatsoever. But she would be like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like,
that's not like how that scripture was ever supposed to be used.
Like what in the world? And like, you pump these people, your leaders that you're training up, full of these things, and it just creates this hubris, this arrogance, this unfounded boldness to go around.
Yes. But you can't encourage that though, Nikita, because if people go to therapy, they'll learn very quickly that they're part of a cult.
So I started seeing a doctor in the fall of 2020, and I would share with her a little bit of what was going on. So that was the fall. And then come like February or something, because she's heard just snippets of what was going on and what was stressing me out. She's a holistic doctor, so we would talk about my emotional well-being and stuff too. And so when I finally left, I was like, oh, I left the church. And she says, and I've never called it a cult at this point, right? She says, oh yeah, the people in the cult don't know they're in a cult. And I was like, so then that was like, I didn't argue against her because I knew things were off, but it definitely sped up my processing. Like, man. And speaking of it being a cult, when you study the Bible, and that's the whole Bible study conversion process, that's another topic in the series. Y'all keep coming back, because this series, we're really going there. Anyway, they tell you, don't search us on the internet. If you search us on the internet, you might see some people who call us a cult, but they're just people who don't want to be held accountable. Yeah. Like, they want to be Lord of their own lives, and they don't like it. Darkness does not like the light being shown on it. And so these people are just bitter. They're bitter because someone challenged them to righteousness. And so if you do search, or if someone says it, then in your mind, you're primed to think like, well, you just don't know what real righteousness is. And the road to heaven is narrow and few will find it. Like, you are just not one of the few who are meant to find it. Aha, they told me about people like you.
They told me about you.
And even our moms, our narcissistic moms, told us we were in a cult.
All day, my mom screamed it from the mountaintop. She would call family members before I could get to their house and tell me, do not listen to her. She is in a cult. She is crazy. And I really resented her for it, because number one, I didn't think I was in a cult. And I just was like, I just wanted to go hang with my family. So it made it extremely awkward, which also made me even double down even more. Like, it made me feel like I'm being rejected from my family constantly, which made me cling to them even more. But yeah, she was right.
Yeah. And they tell you too, that like, they use the scripture where like Jesus is in a crowded house, I guess preaching or serving or something, and Mary's outside and wants to talk to Jesus. Yeah. And they're like, hey, Jesus, your mom wants to talk to you. And in the Bible, Jesus is quoted as saying, who are my mother and father? Who are my brother and sister? Those who do the will of God. Yeah. And this is preached, especially in the campus ministry, because a lot of us are away from our family now. And so they literally tell you, like, what was the movie? I never saw it, but there's the clip where is he Haitian? They're on a boat and he says, look at me. I am the captain now. And that's essentially what the ministry does. Like, look at us. We are your family now. Like, don't listen to them. They don't understand. They're not true disciples. They never really repented. If they really repented and believed this, then they would have told you about it. But since they never told you about this, then either they don't love you and that's why they didn't share it, or they're not real disciples and they can't be trusted. And so now, like, you don't trust your family. They completely isolate you from your friends and your family by making you believe that they're not credible sources, which means what? You can only trust them. You can
Right
only trust
model.
their insight, because they're all walking dead. They're all going to hell and they don't know it. And they actually need you to save them. And we can help you to save them and love them in the most important way. And so it's just a lot of, they foster this dependence on leaders. So I do feel for anyone who doesn't know, my mom passed away in 2016, and she was a narcissist. And so my whole life, she put me down, she belittled me, she criticized me. Like it wasn't good. You can watch any of my other YouTube videos, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and find out the scoop. And so I felt like she didn't like that there was a group of people who were nice to me. And she didn't like that because she had her own issues, right? She wanted me dependent on her. And so and I would actually say this, my mom wants to be Lord of my life, but now Jesus is Lord of my life, and she doesn't like it. But and I think there might be some truth to that, not necessarily Jesus Lord of my life, but the church being Lord of my life. And she didn't like losing that power. But because that was our dynamic and that was partially true, I didn't trust what she was telling me. Like she was clear as day, Nikita, these people are talking about you, because she had been around them here or there. These people are talking about you, Nikita. They're not necessarily who you think they are. Nikita, something's off. They're controlling you. This isn't right. Like all of this. I was like, no, mom. Like it's fine. You just don't know. Then I'll go away and pray, dear Lord, please help me save my mom's soul. So, but I regret. I wish that we would have had a different relationship, that maybe I could have heard her, because there were plenty of people that I studied the Bible with over the years whose families did warn them. And they would come back and be like, either they would ghost us, which is valid, or they would be like, you know what, after talking to my mom, after talking to my grandfather, after talking to my pastor, which of course their pastor, like that's a, what do we call them? A false prophet. That's a false prophet. They're preaching false doctrine. So they don't want you to know the truth because they want you wrapped up in religiosity. They would come back and say, I don't think this is it. I don't think this is for me. I don't agree with this. And we would try to diplomatically but biblically argue them down and try to keep them in our grasp, but all the while thinking we're really doing God's work to save their soul. But I look back on that now and I'm like, man, I wish I would have had that kind of relationship with somebody in my life.
Exactly. I think that's it. I mean, it was my relationship with my mom that made me vulnerable to this.
Definitely, me too.
And made the control was familiar, but it seemed nicer. But it was so much nicer. I was used to being controlled this hard.
Exactly.
I was used to being made nothing and told that my thoughts didn't matter. That wasn't new.
Exactly.
But at least they were nice about it. I was used to never reaching the mark, being told that I just didn't do it. You're this close, but you just can't get my approval. I was used to that. That was home. That was home. And that's the thing, people, now we're understanding with psychology that you have to be very careful about the environments you're attracted to. You can think it's chemistry, it's magical, but a lot of times it's familiarity. And a lot of times it's toxic familiarity. It was familiarity, but it felt safer. It felt like a dream. It felt like this safety and security I always wanted too, because I also grew up in an environment that was violent and scary, and I just never felt safe. And I now have this community of people who say they love me. It felt like a dream. So when I was wrapped up in a nice, warm, cozy blanket, and when that blanket was ripped off, I was like, hey, I want it back. So I just kept working to get it back. And every now and again, I could get it back. With my mom, I couldn't get it at all.
Right, exactly.
But at least I could get it back sometimes in this environment. And there were good times. There was lots of laughs. There was lots of fun. So that was better than where I came from, where it was None of that. None of that. So this just felt like a dream come true. And so when the red flag started to pop up, of course, I just thought it was a carnival, because you can't they can't mean well. I mean, they can't mean bad for me if also I get all these good things. And what people need to understand, that's what cults look like.
Yeah.
That's what cults look like. It is not all bad. Absolutely. The good is what makes the bad okay. You have to have an amazingly complex, relationship with this whole community in order for it to work. And they have to be fulfilling some empty space in your heart. And they do. People who become members of cults are not stupid. A lot of them are very successful. There is a vulnerability there. There's a vulnerability or familiarity there that makes them susceptible to making all these things okay. Yeah. That's why people become members of cults. And I was very vulnerable. Very vulnerable.
I remember. So I became a member. I started coming out, I think, in October of 2007. Then sometime in the summer of 2008, I was on the phone with the women's ministry leader who, up to that point, her and her husband were leading the campus ministry. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, she was talking to me to keep tabs on me because I was states away. I wanted to make sure I was with my family. And a lot of times when people go home to their families, they don't come back to the ICOC because their families talk to them about it, or they're talking to their friends, or pretty much their eyes get open and they don't come back. So now I know why people were calling me so often. But anyway, so she's a grown woman, career outside of ministry staff, but also ministry staff. And she and I might have a meaningful conversation once or twice a month, like between October and, I guess maybe June or July, and maybe not even that often. But anyway, I'm just setting the scene of what kind of relationship we have. But, if you haven't picked up the different things that we're saying, this is also a very narcissistic, organization. And so narcissistic, cult, all that. And so they bring you in with love bombing. And that's just like showering you with kindness and service and all these things to make you feel special and accepted. And when you're a college student and you're away from family and you want friends and you want belonging, and then you add on, like Asha and myself, coming from narcissistic mothers, and we don't get any approval, like we're seeking, we're craving, and like we present as high functioning, very capable, very intelligent, high performing, but inside there's a huge void. There's a huge void that's like, someone please love, please validate. And at this point we're 18, 19, so we are children. We're adults, but we're children. Our brain is not even fully developed. So anyway, and then even less than other people, because coming from a narcissistic home, we didn't get the chance to develop autonomy and confidence like many of our peers. So we're even less developed than other people in that way. We don't know what we want. We don't know what we like and what we don't like. We don't know what doesn't feel safe. Because
we're used to people telling us,
exactly. Even our mothers were not safe. And then if we said we didn't feel safe, girl, ain't nothing wrong with you. Ain't nobody trying to da-da-da-da-da. So it's like, okay. Anyway, all of this to set the scene. This is like so much backstory for one itty bitty story. Anyway, June or July, on the phone with this grown woman who I barely have had that many conversations. Oh, that was the love bombing. So even though we hadn't talked often, the times that we are talking, it's like this emotional manipulation. Tell me your deepest, darkest secret. What are you most ashamed of? What do you need Jesus to heal you from? What do you need forgiveness for? And, so it's this super like bonding, right? Even though it wasn't much. So we go to get off the phone. She's talking to me, checking in with me. I'm sure recalibration, whatever, keeping me on the course, staying true to the mission. We go to get off the phone and she says, all right, I love you. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
My own mother
Yeah.
doesn't tell me that. And this
Exactly.
woman who was like a mother figure, a spiritual mother, if you will,
Yeah.
has told me this. But now looking back, I'm like, that's not normal.
That's not normal.
That's weird. And it's
It is.
inappropriate.
Yeah.
And it's manipulative.
Yes.
And I could see how she would think maybe it's the love of the Lord and God binds us and you have the Holy Spirit and I have the Holy Spirit. And so we're sisters in Christ and I do loving you as a choice.
Yes.
But like from a normal social standpoint, in which case, as I say this, I'm like, oh, the way they'll refute this is, yeah, because that's how people operate in the world. In the kingdom, we can bond so much quicker. But I'm like, it's weird and it's inappropriate and relationships don't work that way. Love must be built and fostered and through memories and experiences and things like that. It's not we trauma bonded and I got you to emotionally imprint with me and I convinced you that I saved you from eternal damnation. So anyway.
And you know why though? Like, so you can look at this now and say, that was weird. That is love bombing. That is not how life works. But you couldn't have seen that at age 18.
No, I ate it up. I felt so special and so lucky to have found true love, God's love here on earth.
And it's actually very targeted. So another thing, I'm learning so much about cults, right? One thing that is specific about cults is that they tend to prey on college students. I learned about this from a cult expert, but then the other day I pulled up an article and I was like, I really want to refresh myself on some of the, wording about why this is. So I decided to type in churches that prey on college students. And an article popped up immediately called Let Us Pray, the Prey. And it was the top article written by the Guardian, published in the Guardian, and it's about ICOC from 2003. But one of the things is that college students are very vulnerable, curious, and idealistic. They are the perfect prey for cults. We're curious, we're open-minded, we're trying to change the world, we're trying to find ourselves. People who go off to college are a certain type of person, right? And also our prefrontal cortex is not developed yet. So that part of your brain that is impulsive, and doesn't consider consequences, is just not fully developed. So we're very susceptible. So someone saying, I love you, we're like heart eyes, don't have that skepticism, especially if you weren't raised with it, if it's a big hole in your heart there. But college students are specifically susceptible to cults because we are breaking away from our families and we want to change the world. We're idealistic and we're still used to someone telling us what to do. Yes, we're adults. We just got out of our parents' house, but we haven't figured out what it looks like to make our own decisions yet.
Right.
It's still very common for us to have someone give us permission to exist. And it's so funny. One of the things people will always say in ICOC, and they just say it like it's normal. Nobody questions why, but they say stuff like the campus ministry is real intense. And you said it earlier, it's like this whole idea of people who got baptized into Marys, they're not as devoted as we are, right? They were pretty worldly. They're not like us. And that's because we had these underdeveloped brains ready for people to control us. And we were trained very harshly because they could. They could, Nikita. They could never get away with that. With
a grown person. Me today, I would have been that guy. Who are you?
Who are you? Who are you? Okay. But that's why campus ministry is so much more intense. That's why, because if you can get them and force these ideas into these underdeveloped, young, idealistic brains at this stage, you've got them. These are the people who are grow up and continue mission because they are fully brainwashed. We can't
And
rely
you
on these
don't,
older singles. We can't rely on these older marrieds because they can't get fully brainwashed like the campus people can and the teens.
yeah. And I was just going to say, and at that age, you don't realize how weird it is.
Yeah.
Like you're just accepting it. Like I know one thing that we would say in our group over the last couple of years as like different memories surface, and we'll just hop on the app and be like, guys, I just unlocked a memory. Like, remember when we did this? Or remember this? Like, isn't that weird? And we just talk a lot about like, we were just so weird. And so like, one thing that one member of our little friend group was sharing, her mom still goes to this particular church, and like a lot of people have left, so much so that like they've had to sell one of their church buildings, and I guess people just continue to leave, and when that happens, they're taking their money with them. And so leadership is actually like making announcements and doing sermons about people increasing the amount of money they give to the church, like more than once, this is coming out of their mouths from the pulpit. And it's so crazy. Like, where do they do that? Like, the company's not bringing in money, so you make the people there pay more? Like, you're not going to let go of staff. And so one person in our group was like, oh, they have let some people go, but now it's getting to like the core people, the important people. And then I just thought like, so if people stop buying Skittles and Skittles starts going under, are they going to raise the price from $2 a bag to $7 a bag? So everybody who still likes Skittles has to pay $7? That doesn't make sense. You shut it down. And move on. Like, what in the world? It's just weird when you think, like, where do they do that? Like, well, since you guys are left, you have to give out of your pocket so we can continue to work here.
Yeah, like you're responsible for this now. You are responsible for making up. And the person said that her mom said the exact words that came out of the mouth of this ministry leader is, some of our best givers have left. That's a very loaded statement. Yeah. Some of our best givers. So now they're like actually letting you know that we have categorized givers in this church. The best have left. You have never been the best. Do you want to be considered the best? That is another way of weaponizing that approval. And it also is a shameful statement to make to people these people are here to learn about God. You have told them that this is God's family, and that they are here because they are loved. And then you turn around and tell them, our best givers have left, and you all need to pick up the pace. So your answer, and that's the thing, the answer will always be in a cult: more shame, more control. More shame, more control. That is how they will come at every issue. And that is consistent in ICOC. The answer for this Rolling Stones thing, let's get together even closer. Make sure you're talking with your ministry leader. Make sure you're getting together with your Bible talk. Come together as a community. Don't look at the Rolling Stones article. Talk to a pastor, or we don't use the word pastor, evangelist, leader, if you have concerns. It's always increase the control. Make it look like love. Increase the control. People aren't doing what we want. Increase the shame. Increase the guilt. That is always the answer. And I started picking up on this pattern. It's always the answer. Even during the pandemic, it just kind of hit me. I have respiratory issues. These people don't care. I remember feeling the pressure. I'm on Zoom, because I'm still devoted to this place. So they have allowed it so that people who still weren't comfortable coming in could come on via Zoom. And it's people preaching. So us on Zoom, a lot of us didn't turn our cameras on because why? It's not a meeting. I'm just listening. Actually, I thought it might be distracting or would slow my internet to cut the camera on. I'm not doing anything crazy. I just don't have the camera on because I'm listening. And I hear the pastor, the leader say, And you all who are at home, cut your cameras on. Why? What are you doing that you can't meet with your family? Immediate shame. There was never oh, it would be great if you would cut your cameras on. Even then, it's like, I can do what I want. But still, it was immediate shame. It was this guilt. What are you doing? Like, I'm suspicious of you that your camera isn't on. And I cut my camera on so fast because it's like, oh no, they're suspicious of me. I'm embarrassed. I'm afraid now because this is what is weaponized all the time. Then they decided, when COVID went back up, to start having services out at Mount Trashmore. So we're having them outside. But still, I was like, this is tons of people. There's children there. I don't want my children. We're a hugging group of people. I don't want to hug people. I don't want my children run into anyone to hug them. I have got to protect myself. I have respiratory issues. I don't know how else to say that. So we still didn't come. And I go onto Facebook, and the ministry leader says, if you can go to the grocery store or Home Depot, you can come out to Mount Trashmore. Just shaming the whole congregation publicly on Facebook. And of course, the people who feel so empowered because they're the ones brave enough to still come and be with everybody, come on to the comments and say, that's right. I was talking to my husband about that the other day because he went to Home Depot, as if going to the grocery store to feed your family is equivalent to this. One thing you have to do. And it just hit me. You don't care about these people, about their health, about their autonomy, what they're dealing with doing right now. I don't know how many times during these Zoom church meetings, some of the ministry leaders would laugh as they were preaching, go, you guys were always joking about how you want more time. Now all you have is time. And it just kind of hit me how disconnected they are. No, we don't. A lot of us have now brought work and school home. So we've got our children in school while we're still doing our jobs, all in the house together. Our schedule got worse. We don't have free time, and it exposes how they see our lives through their lens. If they're not keeping us busy, we must have all this free time now. It showed that they didn't even understand how we existed outside of them. So disconnected. All we are is an extension of them. We're not individuals. And whenever we are not meeting the mark, it's another level of shame, another level of guilt, another level of shame, another level, more control. That's always the answer. And I was like, oh my God, it's the same stuff all the time.
And they don't even try to hide it or disguise it. And so another thing I was thinking that's man, just so weird. And you might have experienced this, especially again in the campus ministry, or if you're really young, in your young 20s in the professionals ministry. If you do have a grievance with a leader, maybe you feel like there's no real connection, or maybe they were insensitive, and you share this with someone else, then it's well, have you seen things from their point of view? Have you considered how much they're giving and they're serving? Where your treasure is, there your heart is also. Have you tried serving them? And then they will, you'll be complaining about how this person was completely insensitive about you sharing some trauma or something like that, which they're not equipped to deal with, but they think they are because they've been told if a donkey can talk, then they can tell you what to do with your life. Yeah. And the answer is, you should go fold their laundry. Well, they're very busy because they're doing this and that and this and that, really trying to serve God's kingdom. Have you offered to make them a meal or wash their dishes? I'm not joking. We are literally told this. I was in a campus ministry internship, and I met my husband for the first time because he was going to the evangelist's house to study the Bible, and he walked through the room that I was sweeping in the evangelist's house because I was getting trained to be, what was the reason? And none of the guys were there cleaning the house. It was the girls. We were cleaning out the fridge. We were vacuuming. We were Swiffering. all the things. Where were the guys? Anyways, that's a whole other topic. We will get there. But I was cleaning this woman's house and that was my training to be the leader, not go and clean the member of the house who has cancer or who is a single mom or anything else, right? Like, or the college girl who is homesick and plan an event for her, which I guess, praise God, because that's more love bombing they didn't need. But like, none of these people who are in need, but this nice fancy house in Virginia Beach. Like, what in the world? Just weird. And so even like on that topic, there's a news story and you can find it on YouTube. I don't know if it was Dateline or 2020, but like one of the major news things, and they did an expose on the ICOC church. And I laughed and I shuddered when I saw this part. First of all, 99, if not 100% of it is still accurate and applies. So even though this was old, it's still very much the same. And so the part that got me was there was a young woman and she was videoed talking to her discipler. Again, the people who are supposed to mentor and coach you and stuff like that. And she shares, it's ridiculous. You know, I haven't really been feeling great in our friendship and very connected. And so I just was praying. And so I'm not getting it right, but essentially she's saying she doesn't get along with her discipler. Like she's trying to find a diplomatic way to say like she has some issues with her in a very nice padded way. And I guess they've been through some things. And so then she says, I've really been praying to God to help me be a better friend to you, that I can meet your needs. And this person's like above her in the hierarchy. I've been praying that God will make me a better friend to you and that I can meet your needs. Like, what kind of twisted, weird Jedi mind trick is this? Like, it's weird. That's psychotic. But that is not uncommon. Like, we're told to pray, to basically to adore and trust our leaders with our lives.
And if it's not happening, it's your fault. So that's why she's like, I'm praying for God to help me to love you better because clearly I'm the problem.
Right.
It's like
because the leader is a devoted, godly woman chosen by the Lord for her.
Yes. Right? So she can't be the problem.
Yeah,
but
not at all.
You're hoping in your very humble thing you just said that person might give you some grace and might acknowledge that, you know, you're doing your best and it ain't happening. It ain't gonna happen. It ain't happening. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I don't even know how long we've been talking at this point. But I told y'all to buckle up. So last thing, one thing that we've talked a lot about in our group and we have had to work on is like just how much being a part of this organization has impacted our lives, and what it has meant for our lives. And we are healing, we are processing, but it can still hurt a lot. Like I changed my major in college to appease this church and be more of an ideal member. And so I could have a completely different profession. Like just so much is different, like my relationships with people. So what I wanted to ask Asha, the last thing we'll talk about before we leave, how has your participation in this culture of leader worship impacted your life?
It's impacted a lot. Like, I am not okay, everybody. I am not okay. I feel like I'm probably the one who's in the darkest place of all my friends who have left. And everybody's like, I get to live my life now. And I truly believe that my future is better than my past. And I'm like, I don't, it's over. There's nothing. There's nothing good. I messed up. I was supposed to leave my mom's house. I was supposed to finally be free, figure out who I was. And, I had some plans that I threw away because I needed to deny myself. And when I came out of that fog, I realized that all I want are those things that I had planned for myself, and that it was never a sin. It was never wrong. It was never hurting Jesus, the things I wanted to do. And that hurts. That hurts a lot. I don't even know if I can go into all the stuff, but it just hurts a lot. Even to the point of the house I live in. When you're a part of this church, you're put in Bible talk groups. So church isn't just Sunday and in a midweek service. It's who you are. And so even outside of the meetings, you're a part of Bible talk groups and you have work to do, right? So even where you live has to be regionally connected to the group you're a part of. It controls whose Bible talk you're in, who are the people who are more consistent in your life. You don't have any control over that. And then if you're a Bible talk leader, you're responsible for all these people. It impacts you being able to go on vacations, how you spend your money, your free time with people outside of this. I lost a lot of time with family that I regret so much. Family who aren't here anymore. And I cry about that multiple times per week, and I wake up crying about it. I lost several years with my best friend. Like I said, that everybody who I apologized to was so gracious. My best friend from middle school into high school through college stood by my side, even though she knew I was in a cult. And I definitely felt like she was a lost soul, and I withheld a lot of affection toward her in time because it needed to be with these people. She was the one person who did, when I did not confront her, but finally come out to her that I know I was in a cult and I'm sorry. She cried in front of me and she was like, "You hurt me." And I was not ready for that. She was so gracious still. She loved me so much, but to see through her, I saw the pain that I had caused, and I completely disassociated. My soul left my body. I wasn't ready for that. There is a lot of pain in there. There's a lot of pain in there that I have not even touched the surface of. Like I said, even the house I live in now, when me and my husband decided to purchase our second house, it was only in a certain demographic because of what was acceptable for this church, for this Bible talk that I was a part of. And I hate it. I wake up every day and I realize I live in this house because I was more concerned about the approval of the people in this church than what I want. I'm the one who has all these student loans. I went to school, I go to work every day, but I didn't even choose the house I want to live in. So it's for sale right now. If anybody wants it, it's waterfront property. You come and get it. Northern Virginia. There's so many things I didn't consider. It is all around me. I feel like I am living, I've left that environment and it's like, yay, I'm free, but I'm really not because I still am living with the consequences of letting other people control my life that I'll never be able to get rid of. The consequences are still with me. That's how I feel. Maybe in another one I'll go into details, but the consequences of not making any decisions for my life are with me always. And it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see a bright future. I know that's dark, but I'm in therapy.
Right. Like, and that this is just the reality. And that was, it's scary. It's scary thinking of coming forward and sharing our experience just because of the way we have been treated, even while in the system, And so that's why there was the whole disclaimer in the beginning, like, no, we don't want to talk to you. Yeah. And so for years, like, I've been thinking, do I want to say something? Do I want to say something? I don't think so. We've been going back and forth. And then even honestly, like asking Asha, I was like low key, like, okay, I don't want you to feel pressured. I understand if you're not ready, but I really want you to do it, please. But our whole reason is like, everybody didn't have a friend or validation group like we did.
Yeah.
And so we just wanted to come forward and let you know that your experience is valid.
Yeah.
Your hurt is
Yeah.
valid. Your regret, your shame, your questioning, wherever you're at in the journey, like it's valid.
Yeah.
And we're still dealing with it. For me, a couple of things that I'll say. One, I feel like it really set my relationship back with my younger sister. I was going to call her my little sister, but she's a whole adult. My younger sister. And when I think about it now, it does make me really sad.
Yeah.
Because growing up with my mom, like we were all we had.
Yeah.
We were all we had, me and her. And we were young girls, we would fight or whatever, and I was too cool for school, but we were each other's safe place. And she was already shamed enough by my mom. And so then I joined this cult, and I think it is my mission to try to save my sister's soul. And I do that pretty much by picking her to pieces. And trying to guilt her into wanting to study the Bible. And of course, I don't know that that's what I'm doing. And I think that this is the ultimate way for me to love her. Like, you might think that I am, like, you don't want to hear this now, but I'm speaking the truth in love. And I would much rather you be mad at me now, and us get to rejoice together forever in heaven. Like, that's the kind of mindset that you have, right? Like, so that gives me license to tell you about yourself, that you are depraved. You are depraved and you are lost. So you are living in the dominion of darkness. And guys, I'm not making these phrases up. These are so anyway, for her to be hurting, and I'm not gonna share examples from her life. That's her story to tell. But she had it hard. She had it hard. My mom moved out of the house to move across town without ever telling my sister that she was going to do that during my sister's senior year of high school. And my dad had moved out. They were separated. So my sister, like, pretty much found out, like, oh, I guess I'm raising myself now. Then from that, like, was thrust into adulthood in some very real ways. And she was very vulnerable, could have used a lot of support and cheerleading and what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very normal word. Unconditional love from her older sister, who knows where we came from, who knows how our mom is. And I just had shame. And I think possibly the worst kind of shame. There's a popular saying that says there's no hate quite like Christian love. And I was that. And it's just been over the last couple of years that I, through my actions and through my, stopping offering unsolicited advice, that she has started to tell me things again. And I get so excited when she tells me things that I'm like, oh, that was probably hard, And then part of me feels like, oh, I wish she would have told me sooner. I wish I would have known. But I have no one but myself to blame. Or I could blame the organization. I guess I shouldn't shame myself that way. But like, I created that dynamic in our relationship. And that is very hurtful.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that, just like your friend, Asha, that my sister is like, I get it. I'm glad your eyes are opened. I'm here for it. Like, she's been very gracious in letting me back in. And I appreciate the authentic bond we've been building, but I can't get that time back. And that kills me to know that during some of her darkest moments, that I was another force that she felt she had to protect herself against.
Yeah.
Like, that is hard.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would just be, that it just, I still, not until I guess maybe I was 30, learned how to start making decisions for myself. And I'm only 33. so maybe not until I was maybe even 31 that I could start making decisions for myself. And I think I'm really coming into it, but it's hard. There are still thoughts in my mind of like, oh, I need to ask someone if this is going to be right, or what they think, or I don't know. And even getting in touch with what I like and what I think and what I want, and being okay with making mistakes and knowing that it's not the end of the world and you can navigate around that. Everybody makes mistakes. Cue Hannah Montana. Was that Hannah Montana? Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. Anyway, oh, we're different. You weren't watching that. Sorry. So, but yeah, because coming up with a narcissistic mom, I wasn't encouraged to make my own decisions or trust myself. And then I just went into an organization that continued to cement that idea. And so here I am, a working degreed professional who has developed and produced a baby, bought a house, like all these things. And I still don't feel secure making my own decisions. And so this is something that people learn to do in their 20s in college. And I'm just figuring it out. And so, yeah, that's how it's impacted me. Yeah.
I get it. I think about that all the time. That I should have been figuring out who I am, making my own decisions. Yeah.
So let me see. I'm gonna pull up. What is our next? Where is it? Our next episode. Ooh, we're gonna talk about purity culture, dating in the ICOC, what it's like being married in the ICOC, and what it's like having and raising kids in the ICOC. And I think we're gonna, for now, we're gonna record that one in 2 weeks because we are parents with jobs and other ventures, and we're introverts and we're tired. So these are not going to come out quickly. We don't get paid to be content creators yet, but they are coming. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next one. But yeah, that's it. Is there any last thing you wanted to say, Asha, before we go?
I hope if you're watching this that you've been in a cult, specifically ICOC, that you some validation to this one, that you're valid, you can make your own decisions and you're not crazy.
And I think that is where we can end it. That's perfect. All right. So we will see you guys next time. And thank you so much again, Asha.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. How do you stop?